Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rock. Go get a chair and bring up one of those chairs.
All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Hoffman.
Here.
Alderman Barella. Here. Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Alderman Rose.
Here.
Alderman Osteen.
Here.
Mayor Harmonson.
Here. All right, we do have a quorum. We're going to move on to the citizens' communications. This is a time set aside on the agenda for citizens and visitors to address the mayor and board on any topic that is not a public hearing. For those here in person, speakers will be restricted to 3 minutes unless otherwise permitted. Minutes may not be donated or transferred from one speaker to another. Any questions or comments for the mayor and board may be sent to the city clerk at tberreth@osagebeach.org no later than 10 a.m. on the board meeting day, the first and third Thursday of each month. Submitted questions and comments may be read during citizens' communications section of the agenda. The Board of Aldermen will not take any action on any item not listed on the agenda, nor will it respond to questions, although staff may be directed to respond at a later time. The mayor and the Board of Aldermen welcome and value input from and feedback from the public. Is there anyone here in person who would like to address the board? Come on up. I think you've already signed in, haven't you?
I have.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Stacy Pirtle. I'm with Magic Dragon Trails, and I'm just here in support. I know you have the second reading on the Safer Streets and Roads grant with the US DOT and Federal Highway Commission. I just want to say, first off, that I realize that $150,000, $175,000 coming from city coffers for a planning grant is a lot of money when you have other expenses that maybe seem like priority at this time. However, I do feel that this is an important grant for the city to be a part of. You already have a plan for sidewalks that's going to extend, the last I knew, take 15 years to cover. This planning grant actually would put you in a position where you could potentially apply for grants with the US DOT to help fund a lot of those sidewalk projects, where you wouldn't have to pay the entire percentage of, cover the entire cost of those sidewalks. So let's say those sidewalks over the 15 years, and I know some of them included bridges, pedestrian bridges going across Highway 54, that was $10 million. I don't know, Carrie, what the estimate is right now on that, but it'd be much easier to pay 20% of that $10 million than to pay the entire $10 million. And you are sitting in a place right now where you already have proven that you are a disadvantaged community, which means under the Justice 40 program, there are some significant grant dollars out there for rural communities to help with infrastructure and transportation. The other piece of this I've been asked is, why does Magic Dragon Trails support this? You guys are looking for trails out in the woods, which is true. We do want single track trails, but there is also a connectivity piece involved with the trail system to bring people to our businesses. You know, when people come here to mountain bike, they're going to be using the restaurants, they're going to be using the hotels, they're going to be using the campgrounds. They want to be able to get to the trails from those destinations, and having bike lanes and having wide concrete paths is a way for them to get there. Northwest Arkansas, and a lot of, if you go to any city anymore, they have these wider paths that are set aside off of the roadway, away from traffic. The other piece of this grant, and I basically wrote the grant with assistance from a civil engineer. The other piece of it is you got this grant because of the high traffic fatalities in the area. You qualified for it because of that. So this grant helps keep cars, bikes separate, keeps pedestrians and cars separate, so that you're saving lives. Because, I mean, we had one fatality not too long ago on the bridge. You know, what's the value of one life for $175,000 or $150,000. So that's part of the reason that we support it. I will stay, since I did help write the grant, and answer any questions that you might have when you get to the second reading about it. But I do think this is an opportunity for the community to plan and have a plan in place and move forward and be able to get some of those federal dollars that are critical to communities. In addition, I am just going to do my little spiel about trails, that they generate income. A new study was just done in Northwest Arkansas, released in June of 2023, and basically they were just studying the year 2022. In that study, they found that the recreational trails down there contributed $100 million to their economy and created 743 jobs. Visitor expenditures generated $2.5 million in labor income and $932 in increased tax collection. Also, having access to free or minimal cost recreation, they estimated a reduction in chronic illnesses such as heart disease, stroke, diabetes, could have saved them $59.4 million. They also found that it improved the health and quality of life for residents, supported new and existing businesses and events, and attracted a talented workforce. And I think any of you know that we need more people in our workforce here. Everybody's looking to hire. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak?
Not signed in, but is there a pen? Nothing, sir. Hello, everybody. My name is Blake Hoditz. I'm happy to be here today. Also in support of the grant opportunity that has been hard-earned by the community efforts. I think it's kind of rare in today's community, unfortunately, that we have organizations that go out and put in effort to create opportunities for a local community, and that's exactly what's been done here today. And you know, what the efforts behind this is to not just make Osage Beach a better destination, but it's really designed to make Osage Beach a better hometown. This is around the year-round efforts, the year-round amenities that we have here. And I understand that it's difficult to quantify the return on a potential investment like this because it's a planning grant, right? We don't know the outcomes, or we don't know the value of the outcomes of the studies that we have not even began yet. So that's what I believe, you know, it's hard to, and I understand on both sides, but what this grant represents is an investment into the future of our community. The federal government has given us the opportunity for a 4 times multiplier on our money, which is always a great investment there. And that's because we are below the national average for road safety. This is something that's just simply a fact and an opportunity to change that. The planning grant is just the first step of this federal program. What the objective of it is not just to have a plan or an example of what can be done. It's to ultimately turn that into an application, and hopefully a winning application, into the implementation grants. That's up to $25 million that we can be brought into our community in a program that we absolutely qualify for. I think we can all agree that we hate to pay the taxes, but we simply do. And this is an opportunity to fight for getting those taxes that we pay with our hard-earned money to come back to our community. Ultimately, this is more than just a financial decision. It is a commitment to planning for the future, a commitment to supporting the community efforts that are behind this, and an opportunity to make Osage Beach a better place for all of us. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Alderman Hoffman, is the liquor license in order?
It is.
All right. Is there any comments or questions on the minutes and board meeting from July 17th, August 1st, 2024, or the bills list from August 15th, 2024 from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Hoffman, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Alderman Morose. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the consent agenda has been approved.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to apologize for everybody. My back is not turned on the mayor or the city administrator other than for comfort level, and that's why I have a chair up here. I am in a challenging situation, so it's a medical reason, and this, believe me, this has just taken a lot of pain away from my back by just sitting here like this, so I apologize for that.
No worries. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on. We have 3 items of unfinished business tonight. First is Bill 24-50, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, amending Chapter 235, Section 235.170, location containers. This is the second reading. City Clerk Tara Barrett, please.
I have no further comments or questions unless anybody has any concerns or questions.
All right, comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second? Alderman Varela, roll call, please.
Alderman Rucker,
Yes.
Alderman Hoffman,
Yes.
Alderman Ross,
Yes.
Alderman Varela,
Yes.
Alderman Rose,
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes.
All right, second reading passes. Next item is Bill 24-52, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement with Federal Highway Administration Office of Safety for Safer Streets for All grant. This is the second reading. Assistant City Administrator Mike Welty.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board, and I would most definitely echo what Stacy and Blake have just explained to you. They explained it certainly better than I ever could, so thank you both for your comments there. Just a couple of other comments I will make about the grant. Number one, and I want to thank Drew for doing the research. City of Osage Beach is one of the smallest communities to get this grant. Many of the communities that get this grant are much larger, and so as both Stacy and Blake mentioned, we do have an opportunity here to truly put some big dollars to work, both through this grant and through the grants that will come after this grant. So that's certainly something that I think is very important. The other thing that I will say is it's a very demanding grant. And I sent an email to the board yesterday, I believe, with a lot of the background details surrounding the RFPs that are going to need to go out for this, both from a grant administration piece and from the consultant piece. And I can't tell you enough how important that grant administration piece is. Devin will have to assign a new project manager for this grant, as this is my last meeting today, and I will not be able to manage this project for you any further. But the grant administrator will help take some of that burden off of staff and help to alleviate some of the tremendous amount of work that's going to be needed to make sure that this grant is fulfilled. The cost of that grant administrator can be included within the grant dollars, so you're not spending any more money than the $1 million grant that you already have. And of course, the city is going to be responsible for 80% of that grant. So with that, unless there's any questions, I do recommend approval.
All right, thank you very much. And we do have Stacy and Blake here for questions, if we have any. So do we have any comments or questions from the board? Alderman Rucker.
Couple, hopefully you can hear through from the microphone, a couple of comments. First of all, one point that was brought up tonight that I failed to realize last meeting, and I think it was very, very interesting, and that is that this opens up the door for other grants and gives us a better opportunity for some of those other grants. Is it a specific, like, you have to do step one in order to get step two? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, sir. This grant, you have to go through this process in order to be eligible for the next stage of grants in the SS4A family of grants. And so in order to get those other grants that will actually put shovels in the ground, you have to go through this process. Obviously, there are certainly other grants that you could still get beyond this, but if you want to get the ones specific to the SS4A grant process that is through the Federal Highway and Transportation Administration, then you have to go this path.
I think that's just another big plus for it, and I think that's very, something I didn't realize is just another plus for this. The other comment.
Kevin, can I add to that? Can I do that?
It's up to the mayor, it's his meeting.
Go ahead, yes.
The other thing is, you guys had applied, we partnered and applied for the Reconnecting Communities Grant. This would also probably lay out a plan for that grant as well, which is up to $100 million. I know you have to have matching to go with that, and I'm not saying, but you can, you go step by step. Warsaw, their plan was, 1,000 feet. It took them 10 years to score a federal grant. You scored it on your second chance. So this really sets you in line to get that. Because, I worked for the federal government for 32 years. There's a process, there's a plan. You have this planned out already. You are really in line for a lot more grants.
Thank you.
The other point that I wanted to discuss was the, from what I understand, a couple of the primary objectives behind this grant, which is very near and dear to me, and that's saving lives. I've been doing that for 45 years of my career. That was my objective, and each and every day I went to work was to save lives through firefighting and whatever other means there was. So if there's not an accident out there, that's a better chance that somebody's not going to be losing their life, and that's one of the main objectives behind this this grant. Also, the objective is to not only save lives but have less accidents. So that means that there's going to be less people out there that are maimed from an accident and are permanently physically unable to perform. And believe me, I understand that very much so the last 60 days because that's a condition I'm starting to deal with for other reasons, but that's very near. The other thing is I believe that at the last meeting there was a comment made about, well, just how many fatalities have we had, and Mr. Wealthy didn't have the answer, and I don't know exact comment, but left the message that don't know, so maybe there wasn't none. And so that's all the information he had at that time. Chief, I asked you if you would have checked into that information. I thought about just winging it from me, but I thought, no, let's get it straight from our police statistics. And so if you could give us some information about that, I would greatly appreciate it.
So I went back to January 1st of 2010, and we've had 11 fatality crashes from January 1st of 2010 to year-to-date today. 2 of those were pedestrian involved, both on Highway 54 in the area of the Glazed Bridge. Total accidents that our police department has worked since January 1st of 2010, 4,070. I can break those down further if I had a little more time as far as injury or non-injury, but and we could go and break it down as far as city streets versus MoDOT.
The main thing I want to express there is the fact that we've had fatalities. If there was only one, that one life's worth $200,000. And then also the accidents that we've had that, like I said, that have injured folks. And we're not even talking about the other things such as just the fact of we've all been through it. You're a 2-car family, and now you only have 1 car because the other one's in the shop, and all the inconvenience that is, and how difficult to get the kids to the baseball practice now, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we can go on and on and on about all that stuff, but the bottom line is this will help us improve our roadways, not only today, but folks, if you just come across the bridge, there's this thing going on down there that's going to bring a lot of people in pretty soon, and that's going to really add a lot more traffic and congestion. And again, I want to be on the front side of it. I want to be proactive. So I'm strongly in favor of this. Thank you, sir.
All right, any other comments or questions from the board?
If you normalize that, and this is part of the reason this was part of the grant process, so they reviewed the period had us review the period 2018 to 2022. There were 5 fatalities reported in Osage Beach, which equates to 20 fatalities per 100,000 people per year. which is well above the national average. And there were 37 serious injury crashes, which normalizes to 150 serious injury crashes per 100,000 people per year, and that also is well above the national average.
Alderman Ross.
So between Chief and Stacy, I appreciate all the information. How many of those accidents have been on Osage Beach city streets?
Of the fatalities?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Meaning not owned by and maintained by the state?
2.
Okay. Do you have any idea the serious accidents that she's speaking of? I mean, it's a swag, I guess, but
I don't even want to
that's fine.
fathom to guess.
And so my concern is this, to be quite honest, as we look at those numbers, that to improve the predominance, it sounds like at least, of the challenges that we have in our city would be to improve MoDOT's roads.
Some of
Okay.
some of those serious accidents were actually around the school zones, especially at loading and unloading times. So from, 7 o'clock in the morning to, or maybe 6:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning, and then pickup times.
Well, if it was the high school at the School of the Osage, that would be a MoDOT road again.
True, it would be,
Okay.
yeah.
So therein lies some of my concerns about, I mean, those are compelling numbers. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know that on MoDOT roads we'd had that many fatalities in the city of Osage Beach, but we've all had some experience trying to figure out how to work with MoDOT, and I don't even know if this money could be used in partnership on MoDOT's roads.
It can. Actually, the state of Iowa applied for this for the entire state, and they received a Safer Streets and Roads for the entire state. So yes, it can be used on highways.
And that, I know that Mike, for example, mentioned if you're ever going to get pedestrian bridges over some of the bridges that we have in the city besides the Grand Glazed Bridge. We can set that one aside for a second. Usually the best way to do that is to hang them on the side of a existing bridge, and MoDOT tends to say, we ain't doing that, okay? So to be quite honest, I'm not sure what the probability is. I realize this opens up other avenues, okay? If you read the Department of Transportation SF4 website, 40% of the money's already been allocated anyway. So yeah, there's 60% left, but they've already allocated 40%. They haven't even really funded too many projects. They funded a lot of studies so far is what it looks to me like, okay? And so therein lies some of my concerns. One summarization of what we're doing right now is we're going to get a very large traffic study. Great. We've seen a lot of studies around here in the last few years. When I say a lot, there's been 3 or 4 that I can think of, and I haven't seen a whole lot come out of them. The amount of resources, not only inside the city, but outside and in the community, I don't know that any of us quite can comprehend what that's going to take. But I know that it seems like it's a monumental task at the minimum. Okay, MoDOT I talked about. At the end of the day, I struggle with this. I voted against it before. I'm going to vote against it again because I just don't think. I think the best use of $200,000 is to work on some sidewalks we know we can put in the ground versus betting on the chance that we might be able to open up something else that we don't even know what that is. Plus all the efforts, and we don't even know what resources monetarily are going to be needed to complete the first portion. So, but thank you for all the information.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman Osteen.
Alderman Ross had a lot of my concerns regarding this. Actually, I had long speeches built for all of these. He's already said most of that.
Sorry, Bob.
Yeah. My first concern was the time. We keep hearing that this is going to be a monumental task. It's a huge project to undertake this grant. My concern is with a brand new city administrator and a soon-to-be vacant assistant city administrator, which would be the individuals more or less helping to spearhead this, that I'm not sure if we want to take on a project of this size at this time because I think we just don't have the staffing for it. Along with the concerns with Alderman Ross already stated, is we really don't know how many people and how much time this is going to involve because it's something we've never taken part of. But we keep hearing that it is a huge undertaking. And I'm just concerned about taking this on at the state of our staffing at this point. My second concern was the percentages of accidents, et cetera, et cetera. We've gotten some numbers this evening, which, yes, a little shocking, but my concern with the same was, well, how many of those accidents and deaths were on streets that we maintain versus MoDOT. And it seems like MoDOT basically, there seems to be the bigger issue with these, the need for the money and the traffic survey is MoDOT, not necessarily the city of Osage Beach. So that to me was of a concern. And yes, you can't put a price to a life. And I understand that, I'm not stating otherwise. It's just that if our biggest issue here is with streets maintained by the state, then why are we not going to the state, having them take these type of grants or go further in the process, because that seems to be the center where accidents are occurring.
And I think that is an excellent point, Bob. I think that, yes, like I said, you can apply these to MoDOT streets or roads. And I think by getting this, you have a good shot of going to MoDOT and saying, hey, we've got this plan, and move you up on that progression of where that funding comes from by having that plan. So yeah, it may not immediately help you guys, but I think you're going to get moved up, bumped up a lot quicker.
Okay. So, and I think everybody's in agreement with the issues with the streets and roads are MoDOT. Prevalently, that prevails down here, not necessarily the city.
If you see, I have a lot of people say, well, we don't have people that really are biking and walking and running on the roads. Yeah, we really do. I mean, I live down Lazy Days Road, and I just one day counted on the weekend, the tourists that come in, that stay at Lazy Day condos at all the Airbnbs, there were 30 in that basically 1.1 mile stretch. 30 people, and you've got a 24-inch kind of sidewalk there. We also, when we did the grand opening of the Skills Park, we had local people, local kids, adults bringing in bikes, and they were nice mountain bikes. And we're like, where are you using these? Why? Because you don't see people riding bikes around here. Well, we go away. We go camping, or we go to Branson, or we go to Springfield and ride. So, we're losing some of that value for our community as well. But I think you're going to bump yourself up and hopefully help with MoDOT.
Just a second, Mike Welty had something.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to remind the board that in May of 2023, it was unanimously approved to send a resolution along with this grant to move this grant forward. One of the only reasons that we got this grant, folks, is because you as a board sent that resolution through to the Federal Highway Transportation Administration. If you, on the second reading of this, turn it down, make sure you understand. Don't expect to get any more federal dollars the next time that you go for a federal grant. So a lot of staff time has went into getting this far. I just want to remember, we can talk about all the statistics, and Stacy is obviously very passionate about this, for sure. But, just keep that in mind, folks, all right?
And I do want to say I need to commend, and I'm sorry didn't say that to begin with. Mike has been great to work with on this project. I really value what he has done for this project. And again, I get about your staffing issues. I understand that. I'm willing to continue to help with this as much as possible. I'm not an expert by any chance, any stretch of the imagination, but I'm willing to help find the people that are and help. I can do a lot of writing. I know federal regulations, and I'm not asking to be paid for that.
Drew, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in my 2 cents as a former state employee. Mr. Osteen, if we were to defer this to the state and they applied a grant of this nature to the state, their action plan would be at a state level. This is really our opportunity to create a plan specific to our community and those that come to our community. And if our community has roads that are safe through it, no matter who maintains it, that's a benefit. And this is our chance to have our say with federal dollars with that grant. If we were to defer this to the state and rely directly on the state and their tremendous staff to do this, there's
there's no guarantee that we would get any focus or any federal dollars spent in or even near our community or even in our county. In fact, it's probably likely that it could get split by their regular distribution factors, which means that at least 50% of the money would have to be spent in Kansas City and St. Louis. So I think it would be, as my professional opinion, I think it would be a tremendous waste of an opportunity to not capitalize on this $800,000 investment from the federal government.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not finished. I'm a gambling man. Get me in front of a roulette table and I'm going to town. That is my other concern is this is a gamble for funds and monies we've no guarantee we're going to receive.
What? Say the last.
This is basically asking us to put money into a project with an outcome that we don't know we're going to receive any monies after the fact. The probability is high, but we don't know that. This is the first step in us being able to apply for other grants, but there's no end game. There's no guarantee we're ever going to get any of those additional grants. This to me is on par with, let's go out and buy $200,000 worth of scratcher tickets. The probabilities are I'm probably gonna win some money. How much that's gonna be, I don't know. But do I wanna put that $200,000 on that bet?
But I can guarantee you, if you don't spend the $200,000, you're not
I'm not
gonna
getting the
get
scratcher's
any.
tickets.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
You're not getting any money back, so.
That's the other part of my concern.
And I'm not a
is-
gambler.
It's the
I'm
first
not,
step.
so I understand.
It's the first step, which is a huge buy-in with our taxpayer dollars, with basically nothing that we can show tangibly that we're going to receive at the end of this game. That is a big concern for me, and I understand, yes, we've got to do this to get that opportunity, but opportunity is different than actuality.
So I researched the implementation grants. I specifically narrowed it down to smaller communities in a rural setting, which I would think we can all agree that would fit our description. I did not see any implementation grants any less than $1.3 million. So that would usually go with the normal 80-20 match. There were just over the last 2 years, because that's all they had data for, which I think that's as long as this grant process has been around. There were at least 6 every year for an implementation grant that matched our general size and rural locality. So, and going back to the nature of the grant and the grant process being so difficult, just generally narrows the field period. So I think, not to be a gambler, but I think our chances are higher than any other grant that you have no guarantee of getting.
But then it goes back to, okay, let's look at it from a public standpoint. Let's go back to the feedback we'll receive from them. Obviously, there are issues that need to be addressed right now. We've got the money that we could use for those, but instead we're going to gamble with that money. That's a hard sell in the public eye. And because most people are going to just focus on just a few key points and not really look at the whole vision. I'm not opposed to this at all. 100% not opposed to it, but I'm concerned with a few different factors. The time that it's going to take, which I don't think we've got the staff to invest in it. The unknown end game and what that dollars are going to look like for us down the line. And of course, it doesn't make me very pleased that basically we've all agreed that we're going to use most of this money, if we were to get future grants, to fix MoDOT's problems. So.
Yeah, but ODOT's probably not ever going to come in and fix your problems. I mean,
There you go. I know. So
Just
once
gonna
again,
say
that's a hard sell in the community, especially as we all know with some of the feedback we've gotten over recent decisions on where we're spending our money.
I totally understand that. I mean, I get that 150, 200,000 probably buys a new lift
All right,
station.
yes.
Something that's,
Okay.
Yes, so
Any
that's all I have.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Alderman Rose.
I've gone back and forth in the last few weeks. I've talked to several people. I've read and reread, and I've had a lot of mixed emotions. It is a lot of money on something that we don't know how the ending is going to happen. And I look at it in one way. I think, there's a huge investment going on by the bridge. And we don't know, and neither does the developer know what that outcome's going to be. A large investment has been being made, but yet we feel positive about it because we know how entertainment will be received by the visitors or residents. And without a doubt, I feel very confident. I am sitting here just predicting, and I think everybody will agree, once that place gets up and rolling, this parkway on the west end is going to start exploding with businesses, with more traffic, more traffic, more traffic. And people are concerned about that. I know we will address it, whatever that problem arises, but since we have this grant that I understand, it's the one and only shot, and it is a gamble, a big gamble. I don't like taking gambles, but I feel that this, looking at our future, we need to look at our future, and we need to be thinking about what we're going to be doing and not just put it on paper. And I hope that this will not end up going on a shelf land once it's over, because we've had an experience in the past with some consulting groups that we spent tons of money, and oh, great, they did a fantastic job, but nothing was ever done about it.
Phyllis, you know me, I'm not letting this go on a shelf.
Anyway, I just feel that I have put a lot of time and effort in this big deal, but more not, and like Mike and you and other staff members, which I know has been very lengthy and very important, which we appreciate. I'm in favor of it.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman Hoffman.
Yeah. Mike, how much are we on the hook for, money-wise?
20% of the total, which would be $200,000.
Am I right or wrong that there was supposed to be, initially, there was going to be a financial investment by
Not us.
somebody other than us?
Yeah, there was initially going to be a cash dollar investment of somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 from branches of the lake. But as I stated at the previous meeting, that has turned into an in-kind investment where they will invest their time. And their time, while is not cash dollars, is reimbursable through the grant. And so you can still get your money back, and in some ways possibly get more money back than you would have if it was cash dollars, depending upon how many boots on the ground that they put involved in this to help.
Okay. I brought, when the very first one, we voted on this, and it was voted unanimously, I brought it up then that, well, we have no guarantee that we have a contract that we're going to get this money, and now just automatically they just turned it. And now it's just a sweat equity investment. Sounds to me like they think it's a bad gamble. I'm a gambler too. I can find better odds than a roulette table, by the way. But it concerns me that we keep using Bentonville as our model here. And correct me if I'm wrong, they've got a pretty big financial investor behind them that's not a city.
That is true originally. That's originally what started it. But once they saw what it was generating, the cities and counties have actually jumped in on it. And like Rogers, Fayetteville, that wasn't the Tyson Walton money per se that was doing it. It was city and county money that did it down there. And as far as the city money, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the in-kind that we looked at coming from the city was the striping. You have your own striper?
Yeah, no, that's true. But what he's referring to is the effort that Branches for the Lake would put forth with community outreach.
Right.
And because this is not just a grant where it's all going to be city staffed. There will be a committee. My hope is that Stacy is on that committee, but there will be a committee of other community members that will help steer this grant. I've already reached out to the police department. I know that Chief Davis is in talks with the fire department to hopefully get them on board, and Branches for the Lake has already secured some spots from the CVB and from the school to also be included in this grant.
And I would say, and I can't guarantee this, I'm only one member of Magic Dragon Trails. If we have some funds that we could kick into this project, I would present that to our board to assist with it. Now, I can't guarantee that we'll, do the $50,000, but, we can come up with some funds.
Well, it sure
25.
would be a nice gesture from, I'll just call it your side of this partnership, because what I am really concerned about now is we're going to keep going down this road, and all of a sudden, every time other people are going to put money in, it disappears, and now Osage Beach is trying to fund this project. And I will tell you that I will not support that. And I still haven't chosen which way I'm going to vote yet tonight, and because I really, really think this is a great project. But it's not a great project if Osage Beach City is funding it.
I totally agreed. And we are looking to begin a capital campaign. So that's why I'm with Magic Dragon Trails to fund some additional work. And, I would hope that our board would support kicking in some money for this as well. Like I said, I'm only one person.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman Barella.
Well, I hate to put anybody on the spot, but I think the big thing is, and I'm supportive of this too, and I've worked on some small grants, but nothing of this nature and size, and I don't have the expertise to say that it would be me to head this up. So I think that's kind of what I need to move forward and say yes, is do we have somebody here that's going to step up and be the project manager now that Mike's not able to?
Alderman Rucker.
Well, I kind of would like to piggyback on that. First of all, the fact of who's going to step up. This new city administrator that we just hired just happened to have had experience with a $20 million grant, I believe, that she managed.
Should have led with that.
From the interview process.
Impressive.
So there's a little experience there. The other thing is I have trust in this staff. We're always going to be having staff that's going to be leaving and coming and going and retiring and moving on and et cetera, et cetera. So to say, well, the staff's in a little bit of a change here, we're always going to be there. And the fact that this staff goes through that process, I have faith in them that they will figure it out. Different people will be stepping up. There's a process called hiring, and that I'm sure is in the process of being done to replace Mr. Wealthy, which good luck with your new position, Mike, at this point. So I don't have any worries with that. I don't have any worries at all with that. Second thing is, I keep hearing you folks saying gamble. There is no gamble here. We are not gambling. We will receive a report that will give us information about our roads. This will be a report that will provide us with safety information, things that we can do. That is not a gamble. That's what we are getting. The only gamble is, can we get more grants? That's the only gamble. Are we going to be able to? Well, first of all, since we have completed this, we have a better odds at getting a chunk of those grants that's only dedicated to people that are in this program. So if you talk about gambling on that, our odds are better to get at least that piece of it. The rest of the grants that are out there, I think, from what little experience I have in grants, that we will have a better chance of getting those, whether it's a state or a federal, whatever, because we are going to have some documentation, some facts, so that this report's going to give us, that's going to say this is why we think we should add stoplights, why we should put crossroads or crosswalks, or whatever those safety features are. So we're going to have something as we go to those grant process to provide a third party that's saying this is why they need that grant. So if you're talking about gambling on the money side or gambling on getting grants, there's some things that are going to help us. There's not a gamble in what this thing's going to provide us. It's going to provide us with information. Lastly, I think, is, excuse me one second here. Yes. Lastly is, we talk about the fact of $200,000 is what we're on the hook for, so to speak. Possibly 175 because there's the 25 in kind. Maybe something there. There's other organizations that have not been contacted at all, unfortunately, that I wish I'd have known it because I would have made contact with them at their meeting last night that may be of interest, okay? So I'm not going to say there is, but there's other avenues that still is possibility of that. It's unfortunate that this one organization did what they did, but I'm supportive of it. Thank you.
One other thing to address the staffing issues, Dan Schulte, who is a civil engineer that just visits here pretty regularly, he is also willing to come on and help get this grant process moving and help with that, pretty much at no charge. Doesn't live here, so it's Zoom, so.
All right, I'm going to give my 2 cents worth real quick, if you don't mind. And then, because I've sat back and just kept my mouth shut, but I just want everybody to know here before we vote that I'm totally in favor of this. And one of the first things I did as mayor, Kim and I went down to Bentonville.
Totally what? I'm sorry.
We went down to Bentonville.
I didn't hear it very, I'm sorry, my hearing aids weren't good. I got to turn my head.
No, I'm totally in support of this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kim and I went down to Bentonville 2 years ago, toured the town, saw all of the developments that were brought on by the bike trails. They had businesses where they literally would drive their bike to the business. And you think, okay, that's a long time away. But where were we 10 years ago? You think, how fast did 10 years go by? And if we sit back here, we applied for this, we made a conscious vote, an effort to say, we want this, and wrote the grant, spent the money to get the grant. Now we got the grant, passed the first reading, and now we're thinking about saying, now we don't want to do that? I think this is very good for our community. Everybody, one of the first things people ask me about the Oasis is, oh my God, the traffic flow. And we have third-party studies, and we'll deal with it, like Alderman Rose said, we'll change. But the fact of the matter is, we have the opportunity to start that project now. And once these businesses boom on this side of the lake, I don't want to wait 3 years and think, oh my gosh, now what do we do? This gives us the opportunity to do it now. And yeah, how much is a life worth? Well, it's worth $175,000 apparently. But I do think this is a very good thing for our community. I don't want to not have the opportunity to apply for grants in the future because we say, no, we changed our mind, we don't want this money anymore. So I won't say anything more, but I just want the board and everybody to know where I stand on this. I'm totally in support of it. So, Alderman Ross.
So just to follow up on a couple things, Drew, your information around the implementation. I looked through this.
Yeah.
About 20% of the grants have been in the rural areas across the nation.
Okay.
It seems confusing from one year to the next, but to give some perspective, there's been, in 2022, there were 37 implementation grants nationwide, and about 50% of those seem to be focused on tribal grounds. Okay, just some perspective of around, and yes, some of them were very large, but they were around tribal grounds.
I think that's due to, if I may interrupt,
Sure.
Because it's very established that those are disadvantaged areas.
Right. So back to, and I realize whether it's called gambling or not, what's the problem? I mean, I think the bait here, for lack of a better term, in fishing terms is what's the bait? The bait is, well, you might get more money, but 40% of it's already been awarded, and predominance of rural money has been towards tribal grounds, okay? Or at least what I see, at least at a quick perusal, and that's maybe a bit of I'm not sure that's completely accurate, but there's significant dollars of that have been awarded have been to tribal grounds. The question around who, so let's just assume that we pass this tonight. Great, okay? So who do we dial up? When we dial up the Department of Transportation or whoever our contacts are tomorrow, who's on point? Who's the project manager? That's what I think Celeste was asking, and I don't think we got an answer. Do we have an answer?
Mike Welty.
I know we got to get going on this, so just one final comment, and I think I will address Alderman Ross's question here. I think you guys have gotten very lucky, to be honest with you, because you have a new city administrator that has more experience in this stuff than I do. So you've got that in your corner, and now you've got some direct experience from MoDOT with Drew in your corner. So you've strengthened your position from a grant administration point of view. And I think that is only going to improve your ability to move forward with this. Are you going to struggle in the short term because I'm leaving? Yeah, I'm sure you will. But in the long term, you've got the team here to make this happen. And I don't know which one of them. We were talking about this in my office before the meeting. I don't know if either one of them are going to take the lead. I think they're both going to take it on together, to be honest with you. Drew was already going to be on our committee. He sat in the meeting that we had recently with the branches and with the mayor. And now that you've got Devin on and her experience in these areas, I think you've only strengthened your position. So I would say, while yes, you're going to lose one person, you've got a strong group that's going to rally around this grant. You've got a lot of support from the community here. I would just hate to see this fall just because we think that there's some staffing issues or because we don't think that there's any chance that we're going to get the implementation grant. Stacy brought up a great point earlier. Yeah, the implementation grant is a gamble. All grants are a gamble, but that's not the only grant out of there. And if there's anything I can tell you from the years that I have gotten grants from the city is if you don't get it one year, you try again the next. There are 15 other grants out there, just like this one on grants.gov, that are just waiting for you to have a packet of information that's shovel ready. And this is what this is going to do for you. So if you don't get the one grant, don't give up, try again and you'll get another one. And if you don't do anything, then you got no chance at all. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
Well, if I could, I think what I hear the answer to that question is we don't know yet. We need to figure out who's going to be on point for this. Is that a fair?
Drew and
Look at
I
you
will be
two.
on point for this.
Okay. So I'll just say two things. One is when it comes to spending other people's money, I believe in a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. And if in fact this is approved and we go forward with it, I hope that you all have your time available next year, because I don't know that we'll be able to implement. My concern is we won't be able to implement all the things that we have money for in our budget and do this. But I will say this, as I told the mayor, my concern is there'll be a study that's on a shelf when we look back on this 3 years from now. I hope I'm wrong, okay? And the last thing I'll say is I will support, if we approve this, whatever I can do to help, I'll be glad to do so, because I'm all in. But I don't think it's the best use of public funds.
I appreciate
That's all I
that.
have.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Morose, roll call, please.
Alderman Osteen?
No.
Alderman Hoffman?
Yes.
Alderman Rucker?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, you first did. So, yes, oh, you're right, you're yes. My bad. This was a long day. Alderman Ross?
No.
Alderman Varela?
Yes.
So we have yes.
Phyllis. Alderman Morose.
Alderman Ross, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yep, all right, motion carries. All right, last item of unfinished business is Bill 24-54, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to contract with Construction Concepts Corporation for a well house repairs project for an amount not to exceed $176,744. Public Works Operations Manager Zach Wilbur, please.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the board, this is second reading to replace the majority of our well house roofs and doors. Nothing has changed. I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Comments or questions for Zach? Anyone? Alderman Ross.
Has Drew reviewed the scope? There's nothing in here about what the scope of work is. Has anybody reviewed the scope to see? Because in essence, this is another example of a bid exception we're asking. And while my experience for many years is sometimes you do need to ask for bid exceptions because we only have one bid and we should have more than one. At the very least, you don't ask for bid exceptions when you know that this is a reasonable price for the work. Do we have any perspective on whether or not this is a fair price for the work being done? Because it's not clear here what really amount of work is being done.
I believe it's pretty fair. 2 years ago, I tried to do this again just with local bids, and that wasn't at, what's the labor deal?
Drew, have you
Prevailing
looked at,
wage,
Drew, have you
and that
looked
was
at the
just
scope of work or
straight
the plan? Were there
150.
drawings done? I don't know.
I think this was more or less an RFP. There were drawings, and they did call out specific items. We also did ask for adults, so we also, I think with the help of Cochrane, Zach, created a list of priority needs, which buildings and which structures needed the most work and were in worst shape. And then the adults or alternative asks were, those extra wants. That way we could stay the closest within budget without going over. So from my perspective, I was not part of the design. I came in right as this bid was going out and was accepted, so I didn't really have a lot of input. However, the initial bid, just the primary bid, came in under budget, correct? And then we chose 2 ad alternates to get additional benefit out of the project. So the budget committee last year set a budget for this project, and the initial bid came in under budget, and then 2 additional line items, asks, if you will, were also added on top of the primary need that was budgeted for originally.
So the line item was 451,000, but somewhere, Mike, maybe you know more about this, the 178,000 was what was within there.
Yeah, that's correct. The 178,000 was what was budgeted for this, and we took the original bid, and then Zach chose which of the 2 or which of the ads were going to be the most important and give us the most bang for our buck. And keep in mind that all these well houses are original. So this is your first. They're all original. You've got situations where we're starting to deal with situations where some of these buildings aren't secure anymore, and we cannot have that with one of the most important assets that the city has.
So there is no concern here on my part that this work needs to be done. The concern that I have is that we continue to bring forward projects that only have 1 bid. And this is something I've been discussing for over a year about how we need to develop a vendor base. There's ways to do that. And it doesn't feel like we're making much progress there. I am probably going to support this, but the reason for the questions and the reason for the conversation is we need to get better at how we bring these forward so that we have confidence of the board to provide exceptions to our purchasing policy, because that's exactly what's being asked here. We have a policy and we continue to be asked to provide exceptions because we can't get any other bids. As someone whose role for 20 years was to follow purchasing policy and to get bids, it can be done, okay? Just one person's opinion. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? Can't see you back there, Alderman Rucker. You're good?
Motion to approve.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Hoffman, roll call, please.
Alderman Osteen?
Yes.
Alderman Monroe?
Yes.
Alderman Morello?
Yes.
Alderman Rucker?
Yes.
Alderman Hoffman?
Yes.
Alderman Ross?
Yes.
All right, that was our last item, unfinished business. First item of new business is a presentation, Public Works Organizational Assessment, Key Findings and Recommendations by Ralph Tillis. Again, Zach Wilbur, please.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the board, I'd like to introduce Brian and Scott with Ralph Tillis. Over the last year, roughly, last 6-7 months, we've been working on an assessment for PW, and they're going to report their key findings tonight.
Thanks a lot, Zach. Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, thank you so much for having us here tonight to talk a little bit about our findings for the organizational assessment we did of your Public Works Department. I'm going to take the first few slides. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague. My name is Scott Parker. I am a senior manager at Ralph Tillis. Before working there, I was in utilities for over 20 years, local government and utilities for over 20 years. So I have a lot of experience sitting in these type of meetings and making these type of presentations. So I guess I feel comfortable back in the saddle a little bit. So as Zach mentioned, we have done a full analysis of your department and come up with some specific recommendations that we think are helpful to you both today and into the future. Tonight's agenda, we have about 5 things on it. We'll talk a little bit about the purpose and approach. We'll talk about the Public Works Department itself, and then we'll go into those key findings and recommendations and then be open to discussions and any next steps. So the purpose of the project was really broken out into 4 main components. The first was to compare performance approach against industry standards and best practices. As a firm, Raftellus, we do these type of engagements all over the country. We work with very, very large utilities down to utilities more the size of Osage Beach. And there's a number of standards and best practices that sort of come out of that. We also consult industry groups, the American Water Works Association, the Water Environment Federation, others, to sort of build that standards and best practice methodology that we compare you all against. Then we look to evaluate the organizational structure and its processes and really assess its impact on operations. Typically what we focus on are what we call service levels. Essentially that is the thing that you hold, the standard you hold yourself to provide to your customers, your citizens, from your water, wastewater, public works department. So we look at that from that perspective. We also try to identify structure, technology, processes, and policy enhancements. Pretty much every public works agency has processes that they follow, obviously. And they also increasingly are more and more attuned and utilize more technology to deliver their service. As we all know, in the public sector, resources are often limited, and so there's a lot more emphasis and a lot more approach anymore on providing the best service at the lowest possible cost, and you have to have a lot of things that help you do that. One of those are your processes and your technology. So we look at that. And then finally, we define and develop our recommendations. And really the things that we focus on are improving efficiency and effectiveness. So you want to look at that from both of those 2 perspectives, because typically the balance between those 2 really defines what your level of service ultimately is. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Brian to do the bulk of the presentation. He's going to talk about the Public Works Department, and we'll also be available to stand for questions at the end. So Brian?
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Mayor, Board. As Scott said, we were tasked to look at the entire Public Works Department. That consists of 3 main operations: water, sewer, and transportation. I will shorten this presentation pretty quickly by saying that transportation, as we found it, was generally found to be appropriately staffed, appropriately equipped. There's a pavement maintenance plan that they have in place. As long as they follow through with that, no real recommendations to change in transportation. So the bulk of our conversations today are going to deal with water and sewer utilities. As I go through the key findings and recommendations, once I start into the recommendations themselves, I want to be mindful of your time. Scott and I can both talk your ear off, and even worse, we can talk your eyes closed. So I'm going to go over those at a fairly high level. If you have questions as we go through on a clarification on a slide, a concept you'd like more explanation on, please interrupt and feel free to ask, and we'll have a conversation. And obviously, we can have questions at the end. This slide is labeled key findings, but it's really setting more the operating context for the city. Vanilla, simple water and sewer systems are complex and costly things to operate and maintain. Osage Beach, for a number of reasons, has several characteristics about it that make them more complex and more costly to maintain. It's a small system size, so it lacks the economies of scale that a larger utility has. It has 1,200 grinder pumps and lift stations that have to be maintained and operated. 90% of the sewer lines are force mains, the rest being gravity mains. That's the inverse of what you typically see in most utilities. It's just a lot more labor and maintenance that goes into these. It's a fairly small number of permanent residents that are served by your system, but you have to maintain the peaking capacity to serve many times that number. And finally, your water system is technically 2 separate systems, because water doesn't travel across the bridge. So there's less margin for error in the capacity of the system. Some of the other things that have made Osage Beach unique include numerous rounds of staff turnover in the past few years, so a lot of institutional knowledge has been eliminated. The sewer and water systems, because they were both built in the late 80s, early 90s, are fairly young, but unfortunately their performance is more in line with systems older their age. For a variety of reasons, the broad asset management strategy has been run to failure, which we see evidenced in some of the system performance. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you go back one, please?
Sure.
Just barely. You need to up your volume or up your mic for me.
Right here? Can you hear
Thank
that
you.
okay?
That helps me.
Okay.
I'm the hearing guy.
That's,
Can you
just
explain
cue
a
me
little
if-
bit more for me? The third one down, water and sewer systems are young compared to utilities,
Yeah.
but more in line with older systems?
Yeah, so the young part, if you think of a city like Kansas City, they've got some assets that are really old, some that are just old, some that are new. All of your assets are kind of no more than 40 years old, maybe more like 30 years old, right?
Which is young.
Which is young in the utility world. You put in pipes and you can expect them to last 60, even 100 years or more, depending on the system and the type of pipe that goes in. They don't always last that way. But in terms of the performance more in line with older systems, we see that some of the pumps, there hasn't been a lot of replacement of some of these assets, so these pumps are getting up in age. There's a significant water loss in the distribution system. It's a leaky system, which you might not expect for a younger system like this.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So one of our main takeaways when going through this study is a phrase that Scott and I call living off depreciation. The water and sewer utilities have been living off depreciation. And to explain this concept through something of a hypothetical analogy, let's say I bought a brand new car and I wanted to minimize my operating costs for that car. So obviously I've got to pay for gas, otherwise the car won't run, but I'm going to decide, you know what, it's a new car, I'm not going to change the oil. That will, in fact, minimize my operating costs for probably a couple of years, but it's going to, in fact, end up having some adverse cost to me in the long run, and I won't enjoy the full life cycle value of that asset like I should. And so what we see is if we look at the value of depreciable assets in water and sewer, they peaked at around $59 million in 2011. And these values have been declining since then until 2022, the most recent data we have, down to about $41 million. This is not what we would typically expect to see in a mature utility where they are replacing their assets on a regular cycle. What ends up happening is you typically see this asset value be constant or slightly grow, because what happens is you take an old asset, let's say it was built in 1970, that maybe a pipe segment that costs $200,000, that's largely depreciated in value and so is near worthless, and you're replacing it with a new pipe segment in 2024 that maybe cost you $600,000. So your total of your asset value tends to grow over time. Also, as your number of customers grows, your service population grows, you add more assets naturally. We can look more specifically at how this happens by looking at this chart here. This breaks it down a little bit. These taller orange bars are the amount of depreciation happening in the water and sewer systems each year. The smaller blue bars are the acquisition and construction of new assets. You can see depreciation is outpacing your reinvestment in the system by a factor of about 2 to 3 most years. And you might say, well, okay, so the depreciation is catching up with us, our value of our system is declining over time. These are book values. This doesn't really tell us anything. Well, it does in fact indicate, it gives us an idea of what's happening to the condition of the system. And there are two budget line items, the sewer repair system and the water repair system. This is quite literally the cost to fix things that break for your water and sewer utilities. And we can see that they were pretty constant 2017 through 2019, and they've started to grow greatly since then. And this is likely a consequence of not reinvesting in the system and not being able to maintain it at appropriate levels. So I'm just going to jump into a few recommendations here. Like I said, I want to do this at a high level. But going back just for a second, I want to say that our goal with these recommendations is to give recommendations that are going to allow the water and sewer utilities to appropriately monitor asset conditions, conduct preventative maintenance, and appropriately reinvest in capital renewal going forward so that the system operates at an appropriate level in a way that, at the most cost-effective means. So specific recommendations, the city is in the process of implementing OpenGov. It's a computerized maintenance management system. It's a fancy way of saying that it tracks work orders. It also helps enable people to make informed decision-making regarding preventative maintenance and asset conditions. We find when utilities implement a CMMS, their success or failure of that is really dependent upon how they implement it and whether how they follow up on it. We recommend that there be a CMMS administrator or a super user who's really taking primary responsibility, not just for making sure that it's good data that's being put into the system, but also that that good data is the correct data that can inform decisions in the future. We recommend that there be a sewer condition assessment. Like I said, 90% of the lines are force mains, 10% of them are gravity mains. For the gravity mains, those condition assessments are conducted via closed circuit TV. It's a little robot that goes into the sewer pipe that usually you do a jet cleaning of the sewer pipe to clean it out first, then you send in the robot. We recommend doing that for the gravity lines. For the force mains, those are much harder to assess their condition. So what we recommend doing is what's called a level 1 assessment of force mains. That's basically a screening exercise to determine which lines are most critical or might be in the worst condition, followed by a level 2 assessment. That's actual external testing of the line that produces some quantitative data to indicate the asset condition. I mentioned water loss in the city. This is a graph of consumption versus pumped water, consumed water in this case being what's metered. What are we actually selling versus what are we pumping up from our wells? Past few years, there's typically about 30% water loss or greater in a utility in which the water system is capacity constrained, such as Osage Beaches. Reducing this amount of water loss will provide some breathing room for the utility. So we recommend performing an AWWA water audit to quantify this water loss. This is a free piece of software from the AWWA that it's an Excel spreadsheet, lets you go through and quantify this water loss, as well as following that up with a leak survey of the distribution system.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Do you have any thought at all on, or have you done anything to say where that could be going?
Where the water loss is occurring? I do not. We just know what those water loss numbers are. That's what the leak survey would indicate, whether or not there are big leaks. You can have large distribution mains that have major leaks, or you can have just service connections that are leaky, and so you have a lot of small little leaks, and you can address those differently. That would be the purpose of the leak survey.
So the other question I had that would follow that up is that, so you didn't do anything that would find where it was going. I guess where I'm going with this is, could this also be going into our sewer water and therefore messing up our sewer numbers? And if you don't know, I mean, you don't know.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Typically, it's not directly from your water distribution system that water gets into your sewer directly. What ends up happening more commonly, particularly in the gravity mains, is they have cracks and leaks in them, and they have what's called inflow and infiltration. So when rain comes, it gets into your sewer system, and you can see a spike in your wastewater flows to the treatment plant whenever it rains. So there's slightly separate issues, but
I'm just going to answer your question about where it could be going to with water loss. Just want to add to what Brian said. Sometimes what you will see, particularly with particularly large water loss numbers, right, when you're losing a lot, if you have a main that goes into or is adjacent to a body of water, that can also be the case. That's the reason the leak survey is so important, because I can speak from experience on this one. We were seeing numbers similar to what you all are seeing, and we found an enormous main leak that was going into a body of water. We would have never known it otherwise had we not done the leak survey, and we fixed the leak, and our water loss numbers improved substantially. So that's the criticality of the leak survey. It should help you figure that out in a lot more systematic way.
my initial thought was because we have a very aggressive flushing policy that we have because of the type of service we have and, you know, da-da-da. And that was my initial, but then when I looked at the chart, it's all year.
Yeah, that was, I thought that was the thing that jumped out at me too, which is there's a pretty consistent about 20 million gallons every month that looks like it's unaccounted for. And the fact that it's so constant, that's kind of what you would expect from leaks, right? As opposed to some sort of transient event. Yeah. You know, neither the water or sewer systems currently have a current master plan. Obviously, the city's working right now on a water master plan. I believe that's nearing completion. We highly recommend that the city also address developing a sewer master plan in the short term. Ideally, from those master plans, we would like to see the city develop 10-year capital improvement plans, or CIPs. This basically takes the projects that are identified in those master plans, prioritizes them, makes a cost estimate for what those projects will be, and then also plans out what years those projects will be addressed. Following development of a CIP, we recommend that the city take on a cost of service / rate study. Developing these master plans will take a little bit of time. So I understand that the city just went through a rate increase process. But once you have these CIPs in hand, that allows you to do long-term financial planning, where you're looking out 10 years into the road and down the road and projecting what rate increases and what funding mechanisms you will need in order to execute that CIP as well as maintain your utility systems. We recommend that not just that financial plan as part of that rate study, but also a cost of service study, particularly for the water side. Different customers use water in different ways. They tax your system in different ways. And when you have a single rate structure across the entire city, what ends up happening is certain types of customers inevitably end up subsidizing other types of customers. And a cost of service study can help quantify that and then create a rate structure that creates equity between those different types of customers. As part of the study, we did a brief rate survey looking at Osage Beach's water rates, residential water bills, versus some other peer utilities as well as national data. Generally, what we find is that it depends on how much water you're using. If you don't use any water, the rates here are a little bit higher than most of the peers and a little bit higher than what you see nationally. But because the volumetric rate is so low that by the time you're using roughly 7,500 gallons per month, the monthly residential bill here is really not much more than most of the peers and certainly less than even the AWWA 25th percentile. Sewer, we see much the same thing. More of the revenue recovery happens in that service charge, but overall, we find that the monthly bills are roughly in line with peers as well as slightly below the national median. Just a few observations regarding equipment. This is a fairly minor one. The city has a single vac truck right now. These are notorious because they work in tough environments and they tend to require a lot of repair. We recommend working towards a second vac truck. The current vac truck is used nearly every day. We're not saying go out and buy a second one so you have two on hand, but let's say that the vac truck is on an 8-year replacement cycle. Wait until year 6 or 7, there's still some life in that truck, and then get a second truck. Keep that older truck in reserve for those times when you might need a second truck or that primary truck is out for service. We do recommend that the city obtain or hire an experienced public works director. What we've been outlining here are a lot of strategic decisions, capital plans, master plans that have to be thought through, executed, preventative maintenance that has to be prioritized. There's just a lot for one person to do. And we understand that you guys had a public works director in the past. It's obviously a period of change here with the loss of Mike. But at the end of the day, the level of complexity, the amount of growth, and the issues facing the utilities, I think, really justify having a public works director. We've seen that there's really hasn't been much. Yes, sir.
I'll go back on that subject. Did you look at the job description of the Public Works Director from years ago?
I did not, because it was also a public works director.
You should have, because the Public Works Director from years ago and the job description and the Public Works and our operations manager, the job descriptions are almost the same. The only difference is that our prior Public Works Director had the responsibility of engineering department and the engineering stuff. So I dispute your findings here. I think you're wrong because I don't think you've done enough and found enough information. We have taken the position of Public Works Director and we removed the originally, if you can go back further than that, our original Public Works Director was in charge of the Public Works. Then we added the engineer responsibility and we put an engineer person into that. Then we lost the engineer and we took that engineer responsibility away from that position. We've named it different titles, but all those things are the same. So I think we have the same person. We have a single position and there, and I would be more than happy to delve into it deeper with you, but I tend to disagree with that.
That's completely fair. I think our position is still just the level of complexity and the needs facing the utility justify a public works director. But these are our recommendations, and yeah.
Can I piggyback on that question because it wasn't clear to me? So is that an additional position on top of our public works operations supervisor that you're recommending?
On top of the operations manager, yes.
Okay, that we currently have. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we also have what do we call Nathan's position?
Sewer superintendent.
The sewer superintendent. So you feel like we need to have a public works director with an operations supervisor over a sewer superintendent. Is that right? That's a unique organizational chart.
It would be a unique organizational chart, I think, not to have a public works director. And I think that the operations manager, what we outlined prior with the OpenGov super user and the needs that the utility has for designing and implementing.
Let me ask the question this way then to better understand what you're saying, because I'm still not clear on what you're saying. If we change his title to Public Works Director, would that satisfy your recommendation?
I think that the level of work needed to handle these recommendations that we're having, developing master plans, implementing master plans, working through the financing, that's beyond what we would expect to see for an operations manager.
So we would, in that particular case, and for that answer, we would need a public works supervisor and a sewer superintendent, as well as a public works director. Is that correct?
Wait.
And I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
I think the answer to the question is we believe that you need a public works director plus your operations superintendent. Your operations manager. Thank you. Your operations manager at the moment is doing all of the work of the day-to-day. From our study, from what we have seen, and that is supplemented right now by your assistant city administrator, who's doing some level of work as it relates to strategic direction, so on and so forth. The load of work that we see from the organization, we believe merits a public works director plus the operations manager, yes.
So you would recommend an organizational structure that would have one person directing one person. Is that correct?
We would say that the public works director, I want to make sure I'm clear because I don't want to misanswer your question.
Just looking at I'm envisioning the org chart that you're recommending.
You're saying, just so I'm clear here, the public works director would only have one report and that person would be the operations director.
That's what I think I'm hearing
There's also
you say.
Administrative staff. You have the super user in the OpenGov, which is your.
So that's an additional headcount.
That could be three positions that public works director would also supervise as well.
Okay. And this, honestly, this is the value that you all were supposed to bring. Keep in mind, you all don't know this history, but the sewer superintendent was supposed to be that super user, or at least part of their role was to be that super user when it was developed and sold to us, okay? I don't know if that's reasonable. My concern with, I'll just say this, my concern with what you guys are proposing is that we're adding people at the top, and we need to add people at the bottom. Those are much more important in my mind. And I'll go right ahead, that's all I needed to say.
Okay. No, I was going to say, and we fully understand and recommend that you add people at the bottom. In fact, I think that might be the next slide. But we want to give you a mechanism for adding those people at the bottom. So going on to water and sewer staffing, the water and sewer techs specifically, there hasn't been really substantial preventative maintenance activity due simply to a lack of capacity, particularly in the sewer side. Like I said, there's been a lot of staff turnover in that area, and they haven't generally been able to have a full roster of their approved positions. What we recommend, first and foremost, is develop appropriate preventative maintenance schedule for both water and sewer. That means the valves in our water distribution system, how often should we be turning them? The gravity sewer lines, how often should we be flushing them? What should our hydrant flushing program look like? Determine what those appropriate levels of maintenance are, what those levels of service are. Using OpenGov, track what it is exactly that you're doing. Right now, it's undoubtedly mostly reactive maintenance. There simply isn't the capacity to execute whatever reasonable PM program you might develop. Once you have that sort of data, once you have an understanding of what you can do as well as what you think you should be doing, begin to staff up your water and sewer staff in order until you can meet those levels of service that you've defined. Now, I mentioned that there's been turnover, especially in the sewer side. Recruitment and retention has been a problem historically. Honestly, Osage Beach is not unique in this realm. We go work with utilities all across the country. They all have trouble bringing in utility workers. It's a nationwide problem. Oftentimes that struggle breaks down to pay. We're going to make a recommendation that the city reassess salary structures, especially at the bottom of this pay scale. And I'm going to show you a little bit of some salary comparisons.
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
Below the national average, what is it compared to the state average or to
We
our
don't have
competitive
state
cities?
data, unfortunately.
Why?
So the AWWA does a national salary survey. When the AWWA does these surveys, these are voluntary surveys. So people have to basically provide the data. And what ends up happening is they won't, AWWA won't report out by individual states.
Well, what I'm
generally.
concerned about is that currently we're 100% staffed, are we not, Zach?
We lost one in sewer.
Okay, so we're better than we've ever been. I have a hard time saying that it's because of salaries we can't get people, and the only information is that we're not up to national average. Well, we're not Seattle.
Well, you're not Seattle, no, but it's not all Seattle that's submitting this data. The national average is the best that we can do, unfortunately. These are for, I think, medium-sized utilities. They do break them down by general size, so I think it's, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the numbers.
Well, I just would have liked to have known how we were competitively with our surrounding communities.
Right. And I fully recognize the weakness of just using national data. But at the same time, too, you have a fairly unique job market here with the service industry, with the seasonal nature of a lot of the jobs and the construction in the area. All we can do really is show you where you fall nationally.
All right, thank you.
And generally, what we see is, so we've got the Water Tech 1 position here. This is the Osage Beach salary range. We also have two different sets of data for AWWA. We have their average salary range for a similar position, as well as their market quartiles. Their average salary range is just that. It's a salary range. The market quartile data, they ask in the survey, what are you actually paying your Water Tech 1s? So we see that generally the midpoint of the Water Tech 1 salary lines up with the bottom of the AWWA salary range. And we see this as we look at the other positions. Water Tech 2, the midpoint lines up near the bottom of the AWWA national data. Water Tech 3, again, very similar. The midpoint lines up with the bottom of their data. Sewer Tech, it's a little bit more complicated. Sewer Tech 1, 2, 3 here in Osage Beach. It matches the salaries of the Water Tech 1, 2, 3. AWWA, because they're water-centric, only has a sewer collection technician, a single position.
I will point out that when we do our sewer hiring, we do offer an incentive pay for Tech 1 starting at $20. What we're supposed to be starting them at is $17.58 an hour, and we already have a hard time getting people to apply at 20.
Yes, sir.
On the rate structure, or not rate structure, excuse me, salary structure, on your sewer techs, were you able to uniquely go after those sewer techs from those cities that have predominantly a pressurized system? Because I think that requires a little more skill and tech.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. One is no, we can't isolate those because this is a randomized survey. But two, and I don't want to say randomized survey, it's a voluntary survey, and we just don't know what everyone's. But our professional experience, I've never seen a sewer system that's really much more than 10% force mains. It really is the inverse of anything we've seen elsewhere with other clients.
The other thing is a follow-up, if I may. I'm a little disturbed, not at you guys, Maddie, and I know you've not been through this, but I would like for you, if you could follow up with the company that we've been paying for year after year after year, that has been providing us information and that we've been following, that I have not been an opponent of. I've been concerned. I've had discussions about replacing them, and I just have real concerns that they've been providing us data and telling us that, you know, this is where we need to be, and now we have somebody else, another group. I realize that opinions are opinions, but they're telling us, you know, that we're way under. So I would like for you, if you could share that with them and see if they can justify how they've been guiding us along this way, that this is where we need to be. But now we have another organization that's guiding us with these numbers from the AWWA, and see if you could bring us anything back as we move in towards budget time.
Yeah, and that would be CBIZ. I do have plans to follow up with them and get our historical data that we've received back from them. Because even coming from them, it's still a recommendation, and it depends on us whether we adopt what they tell us either.
Right.
So I don't know if we took the recommendations they've given us in years past or not, besides just market trend, looking at those specific positions, but I'll look into that.
One other follow-up, Justin, just for what you were talking about as far as state information. There is a possibility of where we can get some state information. Unfortunately, we didn't participate last year in it. Again, it was something I brought up and we got behind the eight ball, but the MML, Missouri Municipal League, you know, for free, we can provide them information and gather information from them. So there is an opportunity for us to get some statewide stuff. Again, when we're dealing with water, it's one thing. We're dealing with the sewer, there's probably we're gonna have very difficult problem finding somebody else that's got the pressurized system that we do. But there's a possibility there, Justin, we could get something that would get us a little bit more to what's going on in our state.
Could I throw something in there real quick? Kevin, to what you stated earlier regarding the information received when we have budget discussions, et cetera, on our employee pay rates, even though we've seen massive increases in the last 3 years, if I remember the data correctly, we still weren't to the recommended pay levels that they had suggested we be at. All of our increases have been to get us closer to that, but we still were never where we should have been. So I don't think what they're telling us is any different than a lot of the documentation we already have. We're just making the steps to get closer to what's being recommended, and that through that data, they've obviously got some to kind of support that. More of our concern was bringing people more towards the center quartile, because we had so large percentage that was in the bottom fourth. But we still have never crossed the 50% line on any employee or any of our employee databases or departments. Other than like one-man shows that are in the upper quartiles because they're maxing out based on tenure, et cetera, and pay increases. But I think I recently looked at that data that we last received, and we were still far under where we should be on most of our departments.
Wow, that's surprising.
Not quite as low as you were 3 years ago, but lower than the recommended, especially when you look at the quartile percentages and what quarters we're at with the majority of our line level employees.
Okay, that's shocking. I didn't realize that.
And if I may, Scott brought up a good point, which is to mention that we didn't go out to, necessarily compare salaries until we started hearing about the level of turnover, not just the, level of turnover, but the difficulty in recruiting staff that they've had over the last few years, as well as the fact that you just don't have really many long-term serving employees, particularly on the sewer side, to a lesser extent on the water side. And that's honestly fairly unusual to see in the utility industry. Oftentimes we see, a breakdown, maybe a third of the employees, sewer tech, water tech type employees have been there 0 to 5 years, another third 5 to 15 years, and then you've got some old timers that have been there for over 15 years, and we just don't see anything like that here. And so that stuck out as another unique feature of the staff. Moving on, just administrative support. We think that there could be room for a part-time administrative assistant to back up the current administrative assistant. The current administrative assistant is kind of doing two roles, front counter as well as administrative tasks. If she's not available, I believe they borrow someone from City Hall. With the addition of OpenGov and the need to be trained on OpenGov, that would be useful to have someone who's more trained on OpenGov, as well as it would help with succession planning should the current administrative assistant ever decide to leave or retire. Yes, ma'am.
So I understand the part-time administrative assistant for the CMMS administrator, is that an additional position or an additional responsibility that you guys are recommending?
We're not saying that she should be that this person would be the super user. We would think that they should be trained to use OpenGov so that when calls come in and someone needs to be dispatched via work order, they know how to use it appropriately.
But as far as that CMMS administrator, is that an additional role you guys would recommend or an additional responsibility of someone who's already employed?
It's I honestly, most likely, I would think it would be an additional responsibility of someone already employed. Exactly where I would land. I would not bring on someone entirely new for the sole role of being that super user administrator.
So just to follow up, I think Maddie was at the same place where my question was going to come. I think I understood you. So
yeah,
are you talking, Maddie, about possibly taking the part-time administrative assistant they're asking about and the person that's going to keep the Gov maintenance program thing they mentioned earlier, maybe putting those two jobs together? I didn't know if that's where you were coming from or not.
I was just clarifying whether that CMMS administrator was an additional recommended position that they wanted.
Okay. Well, where I was coming from is, do you see the fact of this part-time position here and the other position that you were talking about where we needed to have some more work, dedicated person to be in charge of the other one? Is there any reason why that couldn't be one common position?
I think that's kind of a skills mismatch that you'd have there. The CMMS administrator / super user, this is someone who should know utilities fairly well, as well as be pretty technically competent with software. This could be the operations manager. This could be the GIS coordinator. It could be someone else within the organization, but probably doesn't align with an administrative assistant with their basic duties. And then just finally, training and safety. We mentioned the turnover, and so that kind of reduces your institutional knowledge. We recommend developing standard operating procedures, SOPs, for various maintenance activities that'll help codify that institutional knowledge. It'll have to be a source of reference that people can turn to. It will standardize how those activities are conducted. There's also, because the utility is frankly too small for a safety trainer to be employed, there used to be a safety committee composed of employees. we recommend resurrecting that to help make sure that they're getting the training that they need to identify the safety training that's most beneficial to them going forward. And at this point, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to discuss any further questions or comments you might have.
All right, anybody from the board have any other comments or questions? Alderman Osteen.
I should have asked them a long time ago. They're further in the presentation, I'm sorry.
I can back up, just.
Going back to page 62, basically it's monthly residential sewer bills and water bills, those slides, there you go.
Yep.
As you are well aware of, we have increased our sewer rates, and of course that is a tiered program, so I'm curious if this data looked at not just sewer rates we're implementing right now, but what we've decided to implement a year from now?
Does not include the data or what you're implementing next year, no. This was current as of, I think, June when we put this together. So this won't reflect those rate increases, but at the same time, it doesn't reflect the rate increases that these other utilities may be having in the next year.
Okay, and I was just curious because of the data, because obviously we did have the data saying here's the increases we are initiating immediately, here's the tiered 1 year, here's the tiered year after that. So I was just curious if that was somehow factored into these comparisons to make sure that it's accurate data.
It had not been, no, sir.
Okay. My other question, and like I said, boy, I should have marked these earlier. You talked about, God, where did I put this? Something about classes.
Oh, like customer classes?
Customer classes.
Yes, sir.
Can you expand on that recommendation?
Yeah.
I was a little confused on what exactly you were asking there.
So it is
that was at a cost of service and rate study. Defined it up customer classes, equipment for the community. Customer classes on what exactly?
Right. So currently you have a single rate structure that everyone gets charged the same amount no matter whether they're a business, a single family homeowner, hotel, restaurant, etc. It is not uncommon for water utilities in particular to identify different customer classes. So single family residential, commercial, industrial, and they will have different rate structures for those different customer classes because they put different demands on the system between them. Let's imagine you've got, Mrs. Smith on Maple Street, a classic, single family or single residential customer. She uses about 2,000 gallons of water every month. Consistent, low volume user. You just need to provide capacity to her around year to supply her with those 2,000 gallons every month. Now let's imagine like a pickle company, and pickles only come into season 2 months out of the year. So they use like no water 10 months out of the year. And then they're using, 10,000 gallons a day for 2 months. Well, you've got to maintain the capacity in that system 365 days of the year to meet their max demands. And so they're putting different stresses on the system compared to Mrs. Smith on Maple Street. And so those rate structures that differ between those different classes account for those differences in how they're basically incurring costs on the system. It creates equity between those users.
My other two items are basically just comments, just to reiterate some of the things you said to make sure I'm aware of it or understanding this correctly. Going back to the super user, basically you're suggesting that we need somebody who's going to be designated in that capacity, but it can be absorbed by an existing position. Correct?
Correct.
But with the addition, and this goes back to HR, but you are recommending we also hire an additional part-time administrative assistant that will also be versed in it because obviously we need a backup for the system. Somebody who can, in the case that individual, if it's a sole individual, obviously we've got to have some type of backup system. And that's something we've been discussing quite a bit.
We're saying that this part-time administrative assistant is really to help with those basic administrative duties. Those tend to be, fairly simple, and generally most of the users of OpenGov are frankly going to be all of the staff, I imagine. The water techs and the sewer techs should know how to use that out in the field. So we would expect the administrative assistant to also know how to use that, how to issue a work order. The super user is someone that we're saying should be highly trained and should be the expert in the department, not just making sure that the data being entered into the system by all the users is appropriate, but also designing the fields and this particular data points that they're going to collect that can help them make decisions in the future regarding, how they're maintaining the assets and what preventative maintenance is going on.
Yeah.
I might add one other thing to that. When you implement a system like that, there's also the management of the system, right?
Yeah.
The super user would be the person that would understand networks, they would understand servers, they would understand databases to some extent, such that they could manage the system from a operational standpoint, basically be able, so the staff can use it correctly, plus the technical back end of it. They're going to be engaging maybe with OpenGov, the folks there, right, the developers and whatnot. So that's why that necessary skill set, that's why you need that necessary skill set.
Back to the pay structures, the rate structure, and just reiterate this once again. Even though these are national averages, they are national averages based on market, correct?
They're
market size. Is that correct?
It's utility size, I believe.
Utility size.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate that because I think there was some confusion that using national averages basically throws us in the same boat with, like Ms. Rollins said, like Seattle or whatever. But no, this data is based on utility size. So
utility size, I believe, and I would have to go back and check. These are medium-sized utilities, so 10,000 to 100,000. Populations of 10 to 100,000. So yeah, it does exclude Seattle from that consideration, but it might include, suburbs of Boston or smaller utilities in California.
Well, I just know that we've got local challenges that I just don't think are applied and the same in a lot of areas. So again, I would have liked to have seen some state numbers, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world.
The data is only as good as the people that provide it. And if the state doesn't basically have a set site or have the data that we need to pinpoint it down to local communities or on the state level, I understand then basically you've got to go to your next best thing.
Sure, fair enough. I just was expecting it to be a little bit more thorough.
One other note.
Once again, if the data's not there, the data's not there.
Fair.
Just one other note on that too. It's, again, I think Alderman Rucker brought this up. The other piece of this puzzle is the nature of the system, right? So even when we compare across, like you all are very unique in the context of the way particularly your sewer system operates. My perspective, having done this for a long time in utilities, is some of the skill sets that you need to run a pressurized system, right? They're a little bit different than a typical gravity-fed system relative to just because it's pressurized, right? So some of the issues you encounter associated with that, they're just different, and that probably changes the nature of the versus if you're comparing to
of the job
I worked
description
at Kansas
as well
City,
as the pay rates,
we were probably 95% gravity, right? So our sewer staff didn't have to have some of the certifications and understanding of how water moves in a pressurized system nearly as well as you.
So even utilize local data or state data, basically, once again, if we're such a unique system, that really wouldn't have been that helpful to begin with because, like you said, it's a different skill set, therefore different pay rates, different issues.
Just a different context. That's the reason you sort of have to look at it from multiple perspectives.
Yeah. All right, that's all I had.
Hey, Brian, just a quick question. Even in systems where you have seen larger amounts of pressure, is it common to see a city owning this many grinder stations, this many stations altogether?
I have worked with one other utility that had more grinder stations than you guys. And they had about 10,000, but they served an entire coastal county. And you'll be shocked to hear that because of these grinder stations, it caused an immense amount of labor for them because they're having to go out and check and repair and replace these on a fairly regular basis. It caused a lot of call-outs, a lot of overtime, and there's just no getting around them. They're entirely labor and operating cost intensive units that I wish if we had a magic wand we could wave for you, we'd say, oh, we'd have a gravity-fed system for you. By way of context, the city of Denver, if you're familiar, is a very large city. They have 3 lift stations and no grinder pumps.
A more local example, Kansas City, 2,800 miles of water, 2,800 miles of sewer, right, linear feet. We had about 40 pump stations, and that includes flood stations because we have combined sewers. So you're there you go. That's a
Where was that city that had the 10,000?
It was a coastal county. It was Brunswick County in North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
I scoot up here. I believe that I understood you do with your presentation. You didn't do any in-depth evaluation of the fleet or the equipment or that kind of stuff.
We don't do any sort of
Okay.
equipment assessment or engineering assessment,
But
no.
you just made a comment like on transportation, how they were in good shape and everything, and I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the fleet, the tractors, and that is not included in this.
The primary mechanism oftentimes for our data collection is staff interviews and talking with them. And our most important questions are, do you have the tools you need to do the job? Are you doing the things that you should be doing? And are you supported with the equipment and tools necessary? Transportation really had no complaints. And so we've got to take them at their word that, you know, they've got what they need.
Alderman Hoffman.
So I want to thank you guys for, obviously this was a very in-depth study. I guess I was hoping that some of the things that, like, one of the things that you're asking for here is for us to go do more studies, more research. I was kind of hoping that like the leaks would have been done through you guys or was part of this. If not, great. So I do thank you and Mike and our staff for working hard on this. Well, I think one of the problems I have though is, you know, a lot of this seems to be based on hire more people and pay them more money.
Yeah.
And that seems like low-hanging fruit to me, from your guys' perspective. And my question then is to you, how often do you do these studies and come back and say, hire fewer people and pay them less?
We've never said pay them less, because if they're fully staffed, then they're paying an appropriate amount.
Which we are.
Now, yes, I'd say in the last few years that has not been the case. And we'll also wait to see if you retain those people, which has not been the case for the last few years. So we've never said, you know, pay people less, partly because we don't see utilities that are paying well beyond what we would see as normal market rates. The few places that we've seen where people maybe earn a bit more are in really high cost of living places like California. I've never gone into a utility and said, wow, I've got to start working for these guys. It just doesn't happen. We've not said, you know, reduce your staff, because I've never seen an overstaffed utility. At the end of the day, when we're doing benchmarking, we're comparing our clients to other peer utilities. We're comparing generally understaffed clients to other understaffed clients, where they're not getting the maintenance done that they should be doing or want to be doing. We're doing our best to, you know, put them in a situation where they can thrive in the long term.
One other thing I'll add to that, it goes back to something I said at the beginning of the presentation, is we try to evaluate you against your service level, right? And what that means is, what are you trying to do for your community? What are you actually trying to provide? And then we sort of juxtapose that against industry standards, as we mentioned in many cases, as well as, you know, what your past performance and what you're doing. Utilizing that, and there's a couple of recommendations in there where we say you need to determine that service level first before you start adding people, right? And that's the reason, is because in many cases, in many utilities, in fact, most utilities, honestly, there is a bit of a, we know we're supposed to, I'll give you an example. We're supposed to meet permit, right? So that is a service level that you have to meet. What that means is when your wastewater treatment discharge into whatever receiving body of water, you're permitted by the state typically. That's also permitted by the EPA, such as it is. Okay, that is a service level. But remember, that's kind of the end of the chain, you might say. There's other service levels that all the way back up the chain impact that. The other piece of that is that's an effectiveness service level. That's not an efficiency service level. I mean, you can meet permit at 10 times the cost of your neighbor down the road if you're not being efficient. That's where those other determinations really come into play. And to do that, you need good information such that you can compare yourself today against what you were doing before. That's what the OpenGov stuff is supposed to be able to provide you. And then you also look at things like, what is my failure rate? Where have I had issues in the system such as it is?
Well, I can tell you're not going to help us much for retention if you tell them we're not hiring enough people and we're not paying them enough. And we're 100% staffed, and everyone seems to be happy. And kudos to Zach here for changing the culture, which I believe was the real problem, was the culture that was down there. And now there's a piece of evidence that I disagree with, honestly, out there that could hurt our retention. So I'm a little disappointed in that. But that's all I have, and I'll be done. This has been a long topic.
Well, retention is fluid. We were full staff, but guess what? In 1 week's time, we're down 1 person. In 2 weeks' time, we could be down 5. So what they're stating, and I understand that, is yes, we can sit back on our laurels and say, oh, we're a full staff now and everybody seems happy, but it's a fluid environment, and we well know that, and what they're telling us is based on our history. Yes, maybe the culture has changed, yes, we've got new leadership in, but we have not had good luck with retaining employees in either of those departments. So I understand what they're getting at, and yeah, and I understand what you're saying as well, Justin, but unfortunately, you're at a peak level right now. We're in the good times, but once again, we've already lost somebody from full staff, so.
One other way you might think about this is, it goes back to the slides where you all are in a circumstance where you're going to have to invest in some sense because you've depreciated the value of your system. Typically, and your performance of your system is following suit, right? You're spending more and more money in basically fixing the brakes, right? So part of that equation, hopefully, I think Zach's done a great job as well with the culture. It's going to be able to lay out what people need to do. Sometimes knowing what you need to do helps retention as well.
Any other, Alderman Rucker?
Yes, first of all, I disagree with you, Justin, on the pay. I think our pay needs to be increased more. I think we're not paying enough, especially the sewer techs that were under what the national average is, and that's gravity people, and we're talking about pressure system people, and so I feel that that's an area we need to improve upon. And I know Richard wants to say something, but for my closing remarks on this, I would like to charge Dustin with coming back to us in a reasonable amount of time, so this report doesn't sit on the shelf and get dust. And that reasonable time would be 30 to 60 days with some kind of a report that gives us an idea of where you're going to take this report and go forward. For example, some of the things I'd like to see in that report, and I realize you're going to have to contact different people within the organization, and that's why you're top dog. But some of those things would be recommendation 2. We feel that it's going to take us a year to complete that. Okay. Recommendation 4, we're going to put that off or whatever. I want to see something come out of this. Even if you say recommendation 12, we disagree with totally, and we think it's wrong. Or I want something from the staff that through you, obviously, that gives us some information back on that. And again, I'm not looking for something too quick, and it don't have to be in depth. But step 1 is going to be, this is where we're going. Then step 2 is going to be, at what time are you going to continue following it up? Is it every 6 months or every year? At the least every year. But we want to follow, I want to follow up that says, okay, based on this, we've now completed this one, this one, this one. We have these more to go, and we're planning on completing this and this and this. So we have some kind of a roadmap on where we're going, and I obviously know that part of that is the fact that the board's got to make sure you have the funding and the tools to do that. But we don't know that if you don't give us those guidance. So I think I see a couple heads shaking, and I think that a number of us would like to see something like that. Thank you.
Alderman Ross.
So a few questions. One, you all made a statement here under administrative support that workload demands have increased. How did you come to that conclusion?
Just speaking with staff in terms of what's coming through the door.
You said that the role performs key functions that no one else in the department does. What key functions would those be referring to?
Primarily responding to the public. They're the public's entryway to the utility.
So when they answer the phone and they talk to the people that are...
Handle the counter work, yes.
Okay. And what it looks like to me, and I'd be glad for you to clarify if I don't have a good vision on this, is that it would be nice to have a backup for someone when they're either sick or they go on vacation or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. Well, wouldn't that, if you extended that, wouldn't it be nice to have a backup for everything that we do?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. All right. So one of the things, the conversation is around, and I'm going to switch around here a little bit. One of the conversations is around staff and whether we pay them enough, and I don't know if we pay them enough. And one of the reasons I don't know if we pay them enough is because our sewer techs need to have a lot of electrical capabilities because it's a mechanical system. And I think until we start looking at it in a different way, because we can't compare it, would you all agree with that, by the way?
I would.
Right.
Yeah.
That most sewer technician 1s and 2s in most gravity systems need very little electrical capabilities.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Exclamation point.
I think that until we come to this conclusion, right or wrong, that we need to look at this in a different way. Our sewer stack, and I don't know if it's 1, 2s, or 3s, how you utilize 1, 2s, and 3s, but it's not just a person that's a sewer tech. It's a sewer tech with electrician capabilities.
Yes.
And when we get to that point, then I think we can start thinking about whether or not we have the right pay scale. Okay. And so that lends me to the CMMS super user, and it's going to take me to the final. So you are familiar, so I have quite a bit of experience with implementing the CMMS system, and we did have it was kind of shared a little bit. It was a larger organization with some, covering a lot more, and we did have people that, how would I say, either gravitated or were asked to learn more about the back end of the system, if you will, or how to drag reports out and so forth. Do you have any examples of any organizations that you work for where you've seen that, where you might refer Zach or someone, or even Devin, I know you've got a public
Yes.
works background and so forth, so that they could better understand the super user?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because the super user, in my mind, is not a full-time job. It's a
No.
part-time job, kind of. It's kind of like whack-a-mole. When it pops up and you need one, you want somebody sitting there that has capability, but it's not like you need one every day or one day a week or anything like that. Would you agree with that approach?
Yes, sir. And
With that assessment?
If I may, when we first visited here, you had a GIS coordinator who I think had
A what?
GIS coordinator.
Oh, GIS, okay.
Who had just announced that he was leaving, I think the day that we were here. And in all honesty, based on talking with him, and he seemed a very astute man, I assume, and I think he was heavily involved in the implementation of the CMMS. I assumed that he was going to be there. It wasn't until he said, we're leaving, that this became a recommendation that, you know what, don't leave this function open or empty, because that could be where OpenGov kind of crashes on the rocks. We're not saying hire someone new, but we have to identify someone who's going to develop that expertise and really own this within the utility.
Alderman Russell might add one other point. When I was in Kansas City, so I had a group that we had a CMMS manager and a GIS manager because the system was so large, right? In Osage Beach, the linkages between those two systems should be seamless. So therefore, having GIS experience as well as will only enhance the CMMS side and vice versa. Because of the nature of the linear networks that you're dealing with in GIS, those assets go right into the CMMS. Right. So that's a great pairing of a position.
Right. And I think that the only thing I would caution the organization, not necessarily you all, because you all just give recommendations and you're going to move on to something else, is that what I saw is that certain people have certain interests, okay? And there are people out there who are maintaining our system, but they would like to do other things too. And you capitalize on those things. And over time, you can almost build a team of super users that have certain specialties based on certain aspects of it. And so you don't have to necessarily create a job position. You don't necessarily have to have a designation. You just have subject matter experts, for lack of a better term, because they have asked for and are interested in learning about that.
I would not only agree with that largely. It goes back to sort of the super user idea too, right? Is the manager of the system, right? So there's the management piece, but to your point, the systems only work to their highest level of effectiveness if they're operationalized, right? And the only way they can be operationalized is if Zach knows how to do it. The part-time assistant admin knows how to do it. All of the folks in the field who are, because these are all input-driven systems, so it's garbage. So it's a collective effort with one person sort of leading the way in managing.
Right, because what happens is at the end of the day, the utopia is that they're all super users.
Eventually, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you would love to have, absolutely.
Okay. So I think that one of the things that as I listen to this and I look at this whole assessment, and I think this is indicative of what I've been most struggled with around the whole public works organization for a very long period of time is that we jump to conclusions without data. CMMS has just been included for a while. There's data that's being developed. But whether or not we need an administrative assistant, or whether we need X or we need Y, we need data, okay? And one of the challenges that I have is that people tend to come to us and say, hey, we think you should do this, but they don't bring data. And so I don't know that that's what you were, I don't think that's what you were contracted for. That is not a deficiency on your part. But I would just say that as we look at things in the future, that we utilize data and we find ways to develop data so that we can validate to not only ourselves, but our residents and public, that we're using the money in the most effective and efficient way, because data will get you to the right place. That's all I have. Thank you. Yeah. Matt?
On that vein, specifically for the administrative assistant position, I am going to be doing a job analysis with everybody, having them all do questionnaires and time and movement studies, and I am doing that for the department secretary staff as well.
Awesome.
So that will include Stevie over at Public Works. So I will have things.
I'll probably talk to you more about that as we go forward. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I just wanted a little bit of clarification. We do have some rate structure differences between residential and commercial, so you're saying within those, we still need classes?
Are you referring to the meter sizes, the differences in the meter sizes and the rate schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes. That was another reason why I brought up the notion of a cost of service. When you look at the multipliers between a 3/4 inch meter and a 2-inch meter, they're somewhat based on AWWA meter capacity flow ratios. It's somewhat complex. But generally, you expect a certain multiplier or a range. And your differences between a 3/4 inch meter and a 2-inch meter are flatter than what we would typically see. So that was one of the reasons that alerted me to the need for a cost of service study.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just want to say thank you so much to you all that we got to talk to as part of the process, as well as particularly Zach and Mike. They were incredible to work with, and we just thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next we're going to move forward to resolutions 2024 and 5, a resolution of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, approving an additional transportation project with respect to the Pruitt Point Transportation Development District and authorize certain actions in connection therewith. City Attorney Cole Bradbury, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As you all know, the Pruitt Point TIF was resolved before I got here, but they last a maximum of 23 years. But transportation development districts, which are a common part of some of our projects, can last up to 40. We have several active in the city, most recently with the Oasis, but the Pruitt Point one is still active. The developer approached us a month or two ago about actually expanding the boundary of this TDD to construct new infrastructure for the city. If you're familiar with the Pruitt's Point area, there's the Expo building directly behind it off of Columbia Avenue. And the Pruitt companies own a number of acres, I think it's 60 or 70 acres back there, and would like to proceed with developing it. And they'd like to use the TDD to construct some road infrastructure to serve that property and open it up for development, essentially. So what they have asked for us to do, or what they've asked us to agree with them to do, is to expand the boundary of the TDD to allow them to construct this new road with TDD revenues. The TDD revenues obviously come off of Pruitt's Point. Mark Sparkerman and I have negotiated this agreement with Pruitt's attorneys. We think it's a good deal for the city because ultimately the TDD revenues will go to building us a new road and opening up. It's at least well over 50 acres to additional development. And we have also made sure to include provisions that protect the city. Obviously the road will be constructed, but then a number of buildings will be constructed around the road. And we have made clear in the agreement that the city will not accept the road into inventory until both the road is complete and the construction around the road is complete so that we don't take over a road that promptly gets torn up by truck traffic and construction traffic. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and staff recommends approval.
Comments or questions? Alderman Hoffman.
Is all the acreage inside Osage Beach?
Yes.
It is.
I believe the eastern limit of this property is the eastern limit of the city limits.
And do we know what it's zoned for? Is it commercial C1? Is it?
What's the Pruitt property with the Expo I would assume it'd be C1.
C1?
I think it'd have to be C1. There's a couple of smaller parcels, but it's one large parcel has both the Expo Center and most of the undeveloped acreage. So if the Expo Center's on it, that's got to be C1.
Okay, great. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
You just answered the
Very
question.
good. Alderman Rucker.
Hate to throw a fly into the ointment, but what about, as far as I'm concerned, I would not like to approve this unless they change the structure of the board of directors. This is one of the few, if only one, of the TAIDs in our city that there is no representation from the city on this, and I feel that that's wrong, and that we should have a representative there to keep an eye on the use of the funds that are being collected from the taxpayers, and where they're being used. And so I think there should be a representative on that committee or group or whatever you want to call it. I believe, like I said, we have one on every other one within the city. So I have concern with that.
I do know that that's not accurate. We do not have representation on Deerbergs either. And we do have Arrowhead, TSG, and Oasis. If that's the board's direction, we can obviously raise that with the developer. I would just point out that this TDD has been in existence and functioning for at least 20 years, 21, 22, I think. But if that's what the board directs staff to do, we can re-raise that. I don't believe it's caused an issue in the past, but that's the board's prerogative.
Alderman Ross.
Wasn't there a court case in circuit court in Camden County about that, and how somewhere a court, and it may have went to district court, I don't know, about whether or not we would have a seat on the TDD, and it was determined that it wasn't required. And I remember Ed telling me they went to court and got us thrown off the board. Okay, so I don't know what all that really was, and Cole, you probably don't know the history, but I think that something occurred.
I don't have a problem with it not being required. Okay.
I understand.
But I have a problem with it not having the representation.
I don't really know what that case said, but I would just say, and I don't know what we want to do here, and I'm still trying to figure that out right at the moment, because I tend to agree with Kevin. I would like to see some elected representatives. I mean, let's go back to the TCLA that we just had. What was the Supreme Court case about? It was about that there was no elected officials involved with the distribution of public tax funding, okay? Now, it's a little different, but it's a hotel tax versus a tax on loads. And I'm not trying to get into Supreme Court legal stuff. The point is that I think that it is better if there is some local elected official representation on the board, and to be quite honest, I'm not so sure there shouldn't be a majority. I think that the better thing to do right now is to discuss, to look into what was found, assuming there was a case that I believe, and whether or not we even have the ability to push that, okay? Because I think they fought that. I think it's a good idea. I think over time we've developed a much better relationship with Mr. Pruitt compared to where we were 20 or 25 years ago. And if we didn't ask for that, then I think that we should.
And if I can respond to that. That case rings no bells. I did find so all TDDs are created with a circuit court case, and it does appear that there were some entries from back in 2014. I'm not seeing anything contentious just from a quick skim, but I'll be happy to look into that. As far as city control of boards, that is our current policy is to require. State law does not require us to require it, but we require us to require majority control of all boards, and that's what we do for all boards going forward. I think Deerberg's was the last one we approved that we did not follow that approach. And that is not negotiable. It was really not a non-issue in the Oasis project. And so going forward, as far as going back into this one, it looks like it was formed in 2003, so it's pretty close. It's 21 years old. I can, if that's the board's direction to look into it, I'd be happy to. But that would be I'll just say that'd be a bit of a curveball this late in the game. But if that's the board's direction, I'd be happy to look into it.
So this board has operated for 20-something years?
21, it appears.
Without representation from the city?
Correct.
And 21 years later, we're deciding that we want majority control of that board?
I don't think that's accurate. I think we were on the board for a while, but we got thrown off. That's what Ed told me anyway. We were never on that board?
No.
Yeah,
It was maybe not accurate, or I don't remember.
And that jives with what Gina has told me. We didn't, back then, we didn't know to ask for the representation. So that's what Gina told me.
I understand the request. I just don't think we should grandfather ourselves into it.
All right, Alderman Osteen's still talking, yes.
Yes, I understand the request, but I don't think, since that board's been in existence for that long, that we should try to now grandfather ourselves to be representatives on that board or to have majority control. It's an existing board that has been doing business for 21 years. I understand the request and the ask, I just don't support it.
Any other questions on the resolution and on the,
The only comment I want to make is that we, as a board, a number of years ago, seen that we felt there was a need to have a number of people representing our citizens on these kinds of boards and these kind of organizations that are collecting money and doing something with that money and making sure they're doing it, what needs to be done. Somebody who's there, and we felt that that's our response, felt that that was our responsibility to our citizens, and that's why I supported this a number of years ago when this came about, to where we would have the majority. Because before we just always said, we need to have representation, but then we pushed it a little bit more. So for that to be done a number of years ago, and now we have an opportunity just to get one person on there, just to get one representation, because this is kind of a new, I'm a little surprised that they don't have to apply completely like from brand new, because they are changing the boundaries. And that was when I first read this, I was like, oh, they're going to complete, because that's, again, an understanding I thought they would have had to have done. But that's my own little legal world, and I'm not an attorney, even though I think I should be. But anyway, so I think that, the least we can do is just see if, I don't know, it's not a deal breaker, but I think it's the right thing for us to do.
If I can I did flip through while everyone's been talking. There's nothing in here about us being kicked off a board. And there was something 10 years ago where apparently we did not agree with the developer on a motion to make some other change to the TDD, and I would have to go do some reading to see what that was about. But eventually, the developer withdrew its request and left it be. Again, as to this particular project, it seems like a win for the city because we're getting a road to open up development in an otherwise never developed area, and without tapping general revenue to pay for the road, and so it seems like a successful project for the city that staff recommends.
any other comments or questions?
I just have one. What's the life of the TDD?
40.
Huh?
40.
40. So
Years.
we would expect that this additional project would be paid for by the end of this?
Or if it's not, they don't get the reimbursement. This is a pay-as-you-go TDD, so this is reimbursement to the developer. So if, in other words, if the TDD doesn't pay for it, then the developer's going to pay for the road up front, and then be reimbursed over the next 19. I'm looking at, this is so old that it predates CaseNet, so I'm
that's fine.
Thinking that's the right date. But over the next 19, 17 years, whatever that number is, the developer's going to be reimbursed.
So
for
the
that.
idea is they're going to pay for it up front. They're probably going to ask to turn it over to the city, and then they're going to get reimbursed through the tax collection. Is that right?
Carries.
Well, I think
I think that there's a few things that we need to keep in mind, and I'm just going back to, what my recollection or knowledge of it is. I don't think they asked the city, I think as part of a TDD, that the city takes it over at the Sunshine, which has always been part of the contention is that, yeah, you build it, you get the money back, but who's maintaining those roads to a standard where when the city gets to the point where we're looking at taking them over, are they in a condition that, we're just getting roads that are not maintained? And I think that that's something that this board, if I'm right, needs to keep, because I don't think with the TDDs, the way that they work, it goes through the courts. We're asked to resolve to support a TDD, but I don't think we actually have anything to do with the actual approval of it. Is that not correct?
The court, the court approved it. So this one's been approved, and I believe we consented to this one back in 2003.
1 initially.
So, but yeah, and to Carrie's point, that's what we specifically spelled out, because we have a contract with them, just like the redevelopment agreement with the TIF. We have a contract with them that spells out our relationship, and part of the amendment to the agreement we had, the cooperation agreement we have with them, spells out that we will not take the road in until, not just until the road is complete, but until the construction around the road is complete, so that we're not taking in a road that is then going to get torn all to hell, pardon my French, but by bulldozers driving up and down it, and dump trucks.
Okay, good information.
And the life that you said?
40, TDDs last 40 years. TIF is 23, CID's 27, TDD's 40.
And this one started,
It looks, according to, it predates KSNEP, but the disposition date is 8/14/3, so 21 years yesterday.
All right, seeing no more questions, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Hoffman, second, Alderman Barella. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes. Next, we have Bill 24-55, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, establishing a procedure to disclose potential conflicts of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials. This is the first reading. City Clerk Tara Barrett.
Thank you, Mayor, Board, Alderman. Thank you. This is just a readoption of Chapter 120, the conflict for the Missouri Ethics Commission. This just allows you not to have to file a financial disclosure statement every year. It expires on September 15th. Other than that, I don't have any other additional comments.
All right, any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Ross, second.
Second.
Alderman Morose, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Last item of business is a motion to approve construction of a dog park in Osage Beach City Park and funding to purchase dog park amenities to exceed $12,606. Parks and Recreation Manager, I almost said it, Eric Gregory. I almost said it. We need to change that name on here. Eric Gregory.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Several months ago, I was contacted by Alderman Hoffman in reference to a conversation he had with a gentleman who just happened to be a regional vice president for Lowe's. Out of that conversation was an offer of a potential community partnership project, and Alderman Hoffman and I are both very passionate about a possible dog park within the city limits, and it was recommended in our master plan. So after sending Lowe's a scope of work and what we had in mind, they offered to fund $50,000 in fencing materials to be used to construct a large dog park on Soccer Field 3 in City Park. In addition, they will provide volunteer employees to assist park staff with construction. And again, if this is approved, we also plan to utilize inmate crew to supplement our own staff. As part of the project, the city's cost will be an estimated $12,000 to be used for amenities, which will come from the Park Improvement Fund that was originally allocated for pickleball courts, which unfortunately has been rescheduled for next year. So no budget adjustment will be needed. I would like to thank Alderman Hoffman and Drew, especially for all their work and input on this and the designs and estimates.
as someone that's in the city park every day and talks to all of our dog walkers, I can tell you that this is something that's very much needed in the community. I do recommend approval. Happy to answer any questions, and I do think Alderman Hoffman has some comments as well.
If I could, Mr. Mayor.
Hoffman.
Sure. Yeah, I want to really thank Drew and Eric too. We got lucky, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, just happened to meet the right person at the right time. Lowe's is going through a big community outreach with their company overall. So it was, you know, worlds came together on it. I really think the plan is great. I've just spoke to some of the aldermen. There's different philosophies on the direction of how that park is going to go down there. But this is something that, if it ever needed to be changed, it wouldn't cost us millions of dollars to change it. And it's in a perfect spot. And I think rather than putting this park somewhere else, let's highlight it. Let's put it right down in the middle of our park. And that's right now what I see on that field is people walking their dogs around. So I think this is a total win, and obviously I'm in full support.
Mayor, if I could add to that, what I did not say is the city currently has an ordinance that requires dogs to be on leashes within the parks, and they are not allowed on athletic fields. And so it's been a constant battle from park staff to educate the public on that, because prior to me starting, it really wasn't enforced, and nothing against my predecessors, but that's liability waiting to happen, unfortunately. So I think this is a very good use of this space. Soccer Field 3 has not been rented in the 2.5 years that I have been here. In the master plan, it was left as kind of a blank slate for possible development of whatever we wanted to do. So again, I think this is a very good and unique opportunity here to partner with Lowe's, and I recommend approval. And again, any questions you might have.
All right, any other comments or questions? Alderman Rucker.
Two. First of all, we need to make sure we give proper signage. The attaboy signs and make sure it's known that this was done in partnership or whatever, however you want to put it. But I believe very strongly that we need to do that down there to let people know that Lowe's participated in this. Along with that, I fully support it.
Alderman Rucker, can I address that briefly?
Sure.
Eric and I have discussed probably writing a policy that addresses that. That way, if we do get future donations of that we say, look, a donation of this caliber, we do this, a donation of that caliber. That way we're not accused of playing favorites later on down the road. So that is something that Eric's brought up with me. So I just want to, we're thinking about it.
Okay. The other thing is that I just have a concern. I admit, from what I see and from what I've read here, there's no coming back with a recommendation on an adjustment to the budget, no change in the budget, no et cetera, and that concerns me. And the reason it concerns me is the fact that when we go through the budget process, and I know you guys know this, but when we go through the budget process, when we're on square one, we got this big old list of all this stuff that goes in line item XYZ. It goes in line item, 20, whatever that line item is. And there's going to be this project, and this project, and this project, and this project. And we go through all that, but and there's sometimes we go through that, and some of the aldermen's like, no, I don't want that item in there. I'm not in favor of that project, whoever. And so we go through all that. And the problem I have with this is the fact that this came about after the budget, afterwards, and so his history goes down the road. It was not in the budget, and there was nothing to amend the budget or whatever. So I just want to make sure we can do as much as we can to dot our I and cross our T. I don't know what, because this is not probably a normal thing that occurs, but I just have that concern that specific amount of word information wasn't put in there. I don't have any problem doing the amendment. We don't have ordinances that say you have to do amendments of wording. We only have ordinances that talk about dollars. This does fall within the dollar amount. But it also, we do have something in our ordinance that says unbudgeted items. And maybe this is where that, you guys need to look at what the ordinance says about this being an unbudgeted item and where we should do something. That, I'm just trying to keep our backside covered. But I fully support it, whatever we gotta do, whatever hoops we gotta do to jump through to get it done, do it.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman Ross.
So I'm going to hesitantly support this. Justin, we've had several conversations about this. As far as, I'm a big process guy, and just to tag on to Kevin quickly, the challenge here is that we didn't know Lowe's was going to pop up in some conversation and offer that kind of information. However, from a planning process, the original plan is that the dog park would be at Phoenix, okay? And the board has not come to any agreement that it shouldn't be. Now, we may be about to do so, okay? But there's a better way to do this, okay? If we're going to pursue Lowe's, that's fine. But let's pursue Lowe's and put it down somewhere else than we planned on doing so, then let's start bringing people along, okay? I don't think it should come to this kind of situation of, well, now we have to vote on whether we want to use Lowe's funding so we can change our planning, okay? And you may have some different opinions on that, and that's fair. In the end, I just want to recognize one thing. Kevin, during the strategic planning, recommended that we all read all of the feedback from the city survey that we did. I'm not sure there's one, but I guarantee there's not more than one or two comments about a dog park in our city, okay? And so what I think is here is my theory from that becomes, and people may disagree, is that a few people are making a big deal out of something, and I'm not saying that we don't need it. My concern is that where we're putting it, okay? And I realize that it's temporary, but I do want to ask one thing, and that is that, you know, it's land use, and that park had a certain plan, okay? And at the end of the day, I'm not convinced that that's the best use of the land, although it's temporary. I get that, and that is one of the only reasons that I'm supporting this. But there have been other conversations, and Carrie, I'm just going to ask you, you're our land use guy. What are your thoughts around using this land for a dog park?
Well, I'm not foremost knowledge on dog parks or anything like that. I would say it is atypical to use a piece of property or a field that was designed, engineered, and constructed as an athletic field, probably for a dog park in a situation like this, especially in a situation where maybe in the future we're going to be looking for locations for athletic fields, and having one already constructed is awesome. I guess the only thing that I would say from the perspective of land use is as long as it is what they say and it's removable, and then we're willing to remove it if something comes along where, we need that athletic field for athletics, then we can do that, I guess that's the basics
I
of
appreciate
what
the
I
perspective,
would
because
say.
I wasn't around when that park was planned. I think that the park was built with very little planning, to be quite honest. I've tried to, although there was a lot of, let me just say it this way, a lot of construction engineering and so forth with a lot of planning there, the whole vision of that park has never been I've never really understood it. I've just seen a drawing, okay? And so, although I was around, I wasn't around to where, I paid a lot of attention to it. And so with that said, the only thing I'm going to ask, and that is that when it comes time, and we have other options for other places for dog parks, that we seriously consider that, and I'm going to expect that, to be quite honest. Because right now it feels like, well, we got a flat piece of ground and everybody's using it, so let's just go make it a dog park. And I don't have a problem with that, because if it's not being used otherwise, okay. The problem is that I have, and we've discussed this, is that people get used to that, and they don't like change. And I really don't want to be the person that's taken and I'm sure others don't either. I don't want to take the flack for the fact that we're changing things on people because they got used to what we like, that we weren't necessarily very comfortable with to start with. And that's all I have to say.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Hoffman, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll have a second. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Alderman Rucker?
Yes.
Alderman Barella?
Yes.
Alderman Hoffman?
Yes.
Alderman Osteen?
Yes.
Alderman Morose?
Yes.
Alderman Ross?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right, moving on to staff communications.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I got a wife that's stranded in a vehicle. Could I have a couple of quick comments and then exit out? I apologize.
Absolutely.
So, three things. One, apologize for leaving early, but one, Mike Welty, good luck to you. Thanks for everything that you've done. Wish you great success, and if we can ever help, as I told you once, please feel free to reach out. Recognition to the mayor around the magician opportunity for all of the folks here in the city. I think that goes with culture. It fits greatly in, and I hope some people take advantage of it. Recognition to Maddie for making sure that we continue to push retirement planning. I saw those came through on email. And at the end of the day, when we did go through the exercise around loggers, that was what my perception was the biggest opportunity and request we had is we need to know more about our current system. So good for you for continuing to push that. And at this point, I'm sure I have other opinions, but it's not important right at the moment. And that's all I have. And I appreciate your guys' indulging me to let me leave early.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, staff communications. Let's start with our city administrator, Devin Lake, please. Did you want to go first or last?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought you said first. Never mind.
She's at home, but
Let's start with our favorite city clerk, Tara Barrett.
Oh, good, yay.
But she gets to pick where she goes. That's nice. That's interesting.
You're just saying that because she's our only city clerk.
That's right, see? Okay, well, first I wanted to do, on Wednesday, we had a team building exercise. We had a meeting a few months ago. We're trying to, what they wanted to do is, the team wanted to get together and started having quarterly meetings. So we had a meeting and a team building exercise. We had 3 different teams. They got in teams of 2, and they did the first tower, spaghetti marshmallow tower building. They had 18 minutes. They did the tallest tower. They got 20 strips of spaghetti, a marshmallow, Carrie, and string and tape. Our winners were Selena Franklin from the building department and Annie Wallander, our court clerk. So we had a great time. We got them lunch, and they had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So it was fun for them. We're going to do it again in October, and it's going to be a Halloween theme. So we're going to do that every quarter, and I think they had a lot of fun doing it.
Great camaraderie.
Yep.
Very good.
There you go.
All right, thank you. City Attorney, Cole Brewery.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Good. Chief, you got anything?
Just that the patrol division's been pretty busy. I don't know if it was brought up in the last staff meeting or not, or not staff meeting, but board meeting. Then the day before, unfortunately, Officer Roediger and the detectives, they made some arrests for prostitution in the city. Something that we had understood has been going on for a while, but Officer Roediger, he's got some extensive experience in those kind of cases, so we're starting to work that stuff. Gentleman's still sitting in jail on promoting, so hopefully we can eradicate that from our city. So, but Jeff and the crew did a great job on that, so wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Thank you very much.
And Mike, you'll be missed, so good luck at St. Clair.
All right, thank you. Building official, Ron White, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. First of all, I do want to thank Tara for coordinating the team building experience. It looked like it was enjoyed by all of those who attended, and I want to thank Selena Franklin for bringing it home for the building department. Building stuff is kind of what our business, so yeah, she did great. Also, I guess I'm going to spotlight Selena tonight, because the only update that I have that's unofficially on the list is the archive update. As of the last meeting, Selena had archived 298 permits, or all of 2008. Over the last couple of weeks, she's done about 364 more, which encompasses all of 2009 and 150 into 2010. Before our next meeting, Selena will finish up her 6-month probationary period, and it goes without saying for anybody who works with her or around her that she has completed this 6 months with exemplary results. Has a lot of syllables. So that's all I've got to report right now. We've got a lot going on. I did want to mention that compliance officer, building inspector Josh Johns has completed with, obviously with great effort from Cole Bradbury. Thank you very much for your assistance or your direction, because without you it would be impossible. By far the largest compliance case that we've had, to the tune of a 10-page 82 count notice of violation and summons. So that was filed this morning. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you very much. Eric Gregory, Parks.
Yeah, very busy in the parks world. We still have slow pitch softball 3 nights a week through the end of August. Weekend tournaments will be starting back up very soon. We've also been troubleshooting and repairing a lot of little things on our irrigation system that's beginning to have problems. We do have a park tech position open, and Maddie was right on it, and I think you posted it today, correct? Mm-hmm. So if anybody's looking for a full-time position with our parks, check online or give us a call. We're also very busy planning our special events for the rest of the year. Patience Arnall, our new recreation specialist, has jumped right in, and I can't say enough about her. She's doing a great job. We have the Osage Beach citywide rummage sale on September 14th. We'll be coordinating, plus we'll have a sale at City Park that you can register to have a spot. Bob, if you want to come back. And then Osage Beach Fall Festival is October 12th, and then we're also planning the managed deer hunt, and that's all I have. Mike, good luck to you. It's been fun.
Thank you, sir. Human Resource, Maddie.
Hello, everyone. All right, so since our last meeting, I have posted Drew's GIS Tech position. We are interviewing for that between the 28th and 30th, right? Yeah, so hoping to get that filled here in the next couple weeks. We have also posted Mike's position, so Assistant City Admin is also up. We have rewritten Communication Specialist to Public Information Officer. That is posted as well. Parks Technician, and then Human Resources Clerk has been rewritten to Human Resources Coordinator, and that is up as well. I did want to highlight Abby Barrett. She's our accounts payable and payroll clerk, and she's been helping me like no other, kind of pick up where my second me is missing. Since I'm doing both roles right now, I've been falling behind on some paperwork, and she's been offering to help with whatever she can. But I think that's all I've got.
Real quick, Mr. Mayor, Maddie, did you list the communication specialist as being posted? I
Yes.
wasn't sure if I missed it.
Yeah, so that was changed to Public Information Officer now to create some clarification on the roles of the position.
Got it. Thank you very much.
All right, yeah. Public, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just want to, since the last 2 weeks, we have 2 new employees start. I want to welcome them. Transportation, we had Derek Hernandez start. And in the water department, we had Kevin Hamill start. Glad to have them on board. Like it was mentioned, we are 1 short in sewer, but doing pretty good.
All right, City Engineer, Drew Bowman.
Lots of irons in the fire, lots of projects about to get started, and several projects out to bid, but no real other comments as of right now.
Very good. All right, Carrie Bell, City Treasurer.
Yes, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. Yeah, a couple of conversations I'm going to follow up with. The districts, because right now me and Devin are working through where Gina left off with 4 districts that the city is very involved in. And that's all great. I would like the board to, as a group, understand that each of these districts probably equals the same amount of bookkeeping work that the Joint Sewer Board does. So every time we absorb one of these, there is a definite amount of bookkeeping and labor and time eaten up that goes with that. The admin fee, that there is a little admin fee, it by no way takes the edge off of what the actual cost is to the city. So I understand the value of having representation. I don't know if we can have representation without taking on full financial responsibility, but it is just something to keep in mind as we move forward with. It doesn't sound like these are going away or going to become fewer and fewer over time. So I just wanted to make that comment. And because of the assessment, I have a new name for April White. She is my lead super user for Encode. She knows every module. I have several people that are coming up, but nobody has her complete skill with Encode. And even more recently, both her and several people are working to utilize the cloud portion of Encode. So I know I say that to her, but anybody needs a resource for Encode, April White is your go-to super user. Yeah, yes.
Very good. Thank you. City Planner, yep, Carrie Patterson.
Yes. The Planning Commission met this past Tuesday in that case, and the Planning Commission's findings and recommendations to the board will be on your September 5th meeting. So you can look forward to that. And that's all I have tonight.
Very good, thank you. Ty, you have anything from airport?
Nothing to add, but thank you, Mark. Good luck.
All right, well, and if you don't mind, Devin, Mike had requested to go last, so we'll go you and then Mike.
Absolutely. Can you hear me? This is the first time I've ever done this.
Speak up loud.
Okay. First of all, I really want to I just thank you, everybody, for being so welcoming and kind and funny, and especially to Mike. He has been nothing but fantastic to work with. He has helped me learn all the things that he knows, not all of them, probably like 3% of what he knows. So I'm greatly going to miss him, but everybody else has been so kind and welcoming. So I really appreciate that. I look forward to working with all of you and getting into budget. So I'll be sending out some emails about meeting with each individual department for budget meetings here soon. So thank you.
Very good, all right, thank you. Assistant City Administrator Mike Welty, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I must say I'm humbled by the kindness and the thanks that I've received from the board, from staff, and even from some citizens. I'm sure most of you saw the email that I sent out a couple weeks ago. Within that email, I talked a lot about perspective, and I talked a lot about perception and opinion. And boy, did we have a lot of that tonight, right? What a crazy meeting for me to go out with, huh? And I think, I really think that's very relevant right now, is perspective, perception, opinion. I've been here for 20 years. I've seen a lot of boards. I've seen 3 different mayors. And I've seen perspective kind of ebb and flow through the years. And I think sometimes, whether it's the board, whether it's staff, I think sometimes we get caught up in our own perspective. And so I would ask you all, board members, staff members, to remember that the citizens are who we serve. And the citizens' perspective, I think, sometimes gets lost over the years. And I think it's very, very important that we remember that we are all here to serve the citizens of this community. And to that end, and I was very happy to hear it, I heard it twice tonight, the talk about the citizen survey. And I know that Alderman Rucker has talked about it several times, but don't let that get lost. Don't let that get lost. I know there's some stuff in there where people get confused about Lake Ozark or Osage Beach, right? But don't let that get lost. Their perspective is more important. Their perception of us is more important than our own perspectives. And please make sure that you remember that. And to that end, I'll ask you all, go back to that citizen survey. Make sure you read through that. Make sure you look at that. And I know we talked a lot about a lot of different things tonight, but also remember that we also did a lot of citizen surveys within the actual park master plan as well. And that was more specific to the park, but there's a lot of great perspectives of our community members in that as well. So I just want to make sure that the board understands not to lose sight of that. And last but not least, I'll tell you, You guys have got a great staff. Take it from somebody who has been here for 20 years. The staff you have here is some of the most professional, some of the best staff I've ever worked with. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mike. Alderman Rucker.
First of all, Mike, I didn't stand, but that was not out of not being honored, but by out of keeping the pain down. A couple of things. First of all, just to follow up, Mike, you won't be, this is not goodbye, this is see you later. Remember that. It's not goodbye, see you later. One of the things I want to bring up is, I don't know how many, I do know, there's been a couple of the staff members that have dealt with this gentleman that I'm going to talk about. And I dealt with him, and it was extremely challenging to deal with this citizen. I don't know if any of you will be dealing with him. Some of the members of the board, I've been told, know this person. I found his name out only because he told me it was Joe, and he told me he lived on Phillips Road, and so that's all he told me. It's not that he refused to tell me the rest, it's just I couldn't get a word in edgewise most of the time to ask him anything more than that. But I did my homework a little bit to find out a little bit more, and I believe it's Joe, but V-A-L-I-S. He lives at, I believe, 1319 Phillips Road. And Joe, if you're listening out there, I listened to you. Unfortunately, you didn't listen to me because you wouldn't let me talk. And so I just tell you, the staff members that listen to him, I'm sympathetic to you. I know some of you did. And it was very challenging because I kept trying to answer his concerns and his questions, and he would just go right off on another one. And there was just a lot in the conversation that was not, it wasn't nasty, but it was very difficult to have the conversation and try to understand. I did understand what his concern was. It's just he wouldn't let me answer what I felt the response was to his concern. And his main concern was the fact that we are putting sidewalks down, just lost the name of the road. Osage Beach Road, excuse me, my brain dead. Down Osage Beach Road, and we're only putting them down in the commercial area. We're not putting them down in the residential area, and all the people don't walk there, and nobody will use it. And the best thing that I could do is quit, because I'm not worth being an alderman, because I did this stupid thing, and but yet he wouldn't let me explain to him the justification that I had and the justification that I know the board and the discussion that we all had, and there was a lot of back and forth discussion about that. So I just bring that up to you. If you run across him, or if he wants to deal with him or whatever, just try to. I don't tell you to hang up on him, but I will tell you this: after 35 minutes of me, and you all will appreciate this, after 35 minutes, I think I had 4 minutes worth of conversation that I talked. And that's not very normal. I hung up. I said, that's it. If you're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to listen to you. So if you had to deal with him, please try to. Maybe a different approach will be better than what I did, but it was challenging. The next thing I have is Carrie, the concern you brought up about these boards and et cetera. I would like for you to see if you can, yourself and through Cole, look into how we can properly be reimbursed for the expenditure. If it's state statute that we've got to change.
It's all pre-set up.
Well, that doesn't mean we can't change it.
Well, to some.
You can look in and let me know. I mean, there's nothing that's not changeable. I mean, moving forward is what I'm talking about. If it's a state statute that we need to change, we'll start with the state legislators, and I mean, there's nothing that.
It's by contract. So what we did with Oasis is much better, much closer to where it needs to be. It's all negotiated. It's just that a lot of these.
Within our park.
But these are deals that were struck by previous administrations, previous boards.
It felt that they were doing the right thing,
And,
I understand
and
that.
they're very much deals that we are bound to. They're contracts.
As we move forward then, whatever data that you can have,
I just wanted to add that side of that. There's always two sides to.
right.
With
Well,
control comes,
understandable.
with control comes responsibility.
Right. But it's also, that project there should be funding, whatever it takes to support that. So the last thing I have is for the board. I am very upset with all of us, all of the board, about what's been going on over the last couple of months that we have been involved with. And I'm going to get specific. We spent oodles amount of time discussing, debating, arguing over what to do with the bathrooms down at the park. We spent oodles amount of time tonight about the grant. Okay, we spent oodles amount of time about sidewalk, the sidewalk that just down, I was just talking about down Osage Beach Road. And what upsets me is the fact that all three of those projects, all three of those things was brought to this board during budget time, and we spent maybe a minute on them, or maybe we spent a little more. We don't need to be spending a half hour at this meeting almost killing it, almost not getting it done, because that's what happened with two of these projects. The Osage Beach Road with the sidewalk, we majorly altered that. That cost us a bunch of money to do that, because now the engineers had to go back and redo it. We need to be asking the questions and thinking about those things at the budget meetings. If we don't like the fact that the bathroom's going to be costing us roughly X number of dollars, then we don't need to approve it in the budget. Look at the staff time that was spent on those three projects because we made a decision to say go for it, and then we sat up here and said, no, wait, maybe we don't want you to go for it. We need to be asking those tough questions in budget time. I don't like to see the budget time go more than 3 days, but you know what? I'd rather go 4 or 5 days than to spend the time up here and to waste the staff time. How much time did Zach spend on the generator? I don't know if you guys remember that, okay? We budgeted that, we approved that. He spent all that time and we killed it. We need to be thinking ahead about those things in our budget time and thinking of our staff. And if we're going to want them to go out, and we have requested staff to do a lot of digging. Mike Wealthy has done so much digging on stuff, it's unbelievable compared to what it used to be. We ask him to do that. Well, what we need to do is because we need to be thinking about that when we approve something in budget, tell them we want it, and then when it comes time for the project, we go through all that and almost kill it. We need to be thinking further ahead. Or one of the things that unfortunately Alderman Ross is not here, but him and I had this conversation. It was his idea, and I somewhat support it, but with some caveat, and that is on some of these projects of X number of dollars and more, and him and I just discussed, and I'm not speaking for him, but we said, $100,000, maybe $200,000. Maybe we need to have a little more of a workshop on that before we take and go out to bid or at some phase between and I think that should be all the way back to the budget time. Why should we approve that bathroom situation? Why should we approve that at the budget time and then with all the concerns that came out about that? We can solve that back at the budget time. And if it means more meetings at budget time, I'm not in favor of it, but I'm also not in favor of what's occurred over these last number of months on those projects. I'll get off my soap.
All right. Alderman Barella.
Oh, I just want to say, Mike, thank you for giving me a warm welcome. And I know we haven't got to spend very much time together, but I do appreciate the knowledge you shared while we did. And congratulations on your new position, and best of wishes to you.
Alderman Hoffman.
Well, I'd like to start by responding to Alderman Rucker. I'm not philosophically, I kind of support what you just said, except for when we go back to the budget meeting, we jammed it all into 2 days. And how many times I hear over and over, well, we can approve it now and we can readdress this later if we want to kill it. That's the process we set out there. That's the process we're using. Because if we were going to do it the other way, there were things in that budget I would have not supported. So I agree with you, but that means we have to extend it. We need more time. There's just no way around it because I already felt like it was rushed. Just wanted to throw that back out to you. Two last things. One, Thank you, everyone, for supporting the dog park. I was pretty sure if it was a tie and thrown back to the mayor, it was going to go through. Felt pretty good about that. Something that my eyes got open to early on was it takes a lot of time to get things done in the city. And honestly, Mike Welty's helped me with that more than anyone and helped me get things done. But we started talking about this dog park the 1st of May, so, and you're probably right. We probably did push hard to get it open. We kind of made some exceptions because it was a unique opportunity. But we're on track to get that thing open at Fall Festival. And by the end of the time we'd get that done, it's 5 months later, So I'm really thankful to everyone for supporting it. I know it was a little bit of a unique situation, but thanks again, Eric, for all your work on it, and Drew and Mike as well. So I think it's going to be very popular down there. And lastly, Mike, I wish you nothing but the best. You have helped me and the city get things done. I had a great working relationship with you. Sure, we had some spirited disagreements at times, but if I had come into this role and there hadn't been someone as good at their job as you are, I would have been pulling my hair out after 6 months. And we did get a lot accomplished, and I'm very proud of that. And I think St. Clair is getting one hell of a city administrator. So congratulations to you, and I wish you nothing but the best.
All right, thank you. Alderman Osteen.
First of all, I would like to thank Tara for bringing this to our attention.
Yeah.
I think I've preached about this before, about bringing things from a personal level or department level back to the board. I challenge all our other departments to come to us with something similar to this. Show us that you're building more team unity, doing some fun exercises, et cetera, et cetera. So direct challenge to all the other departments. Secondly, and this is going back to Alderman Rucker's comments earlier, although I do agree in theory with what you stated, to me, the budget sessions basically are, I don't want to say it's a wish list, but it's a list of intent. It's a list based on things we'd like to have occur, and it's never really based on hard fact when it comes to numbers. Because when we set budget, we don't have invoices for these projects in our hands. A lot of times opinions will change on moving forward with certain projects, or debates will happen regarding them because the scope of work changes or the costs change. I mean, we obviously have good intentions when we set that budget to be as close to the dollar as we can, but as we know, sometimes things skew those numbers, and that's where the debates occur. Or people may have, once they thought about it more in depth, have a change of opinion. Yes, we initially approved the Safer Roads grant application in May of 2023, but guess what? That was 15 months ago. People's thoughts about it may have changed. The whole process maybe came more to light at this point, which is why I was flip-flopping on it, because yes, I was all for it at the beginning, but the more I thought about it, the more questions, concerns I had. That's when we have these debates. That's why these meetings go longer than we all anticipated, because it's people have thought more about the project and the dollars being set before them. My last comment is for Mr. Welty. How dare you betray us and decide to leave? You are a traitor.
I was going to say it, but I didn't have the heart.
I'm still expecting to have a few beverages with you at MML this year because you're always the most fun alderman at the.
Thank you.
At that
That's how it
conference.
continues.
Challenge accepted.
I was going to basically talk about you being one of my drinking buddies and smoking buddies at the MML conference.
I quit smoking, sir.
I know,
Sorry.
and smoking is a bad habit, but there is a positive to it, and that's that sometimes you get to spend some quality one-on-one time with people you don't think you normally would have. Mike and I obviously bonded over a few years of conferences because we were the only smokers. So we got some chance to really have some discussions, not necessarily always about city business, but we had some good heart-to-heart discussions. It's been a pleasure working with you. You know, I've been a big supporter for a lot that you brought to the board, sometimes the only supporter for a lot of things you brought to the board. But that's because I believe in your vision. I believed in you. So best of luck in your future endeavors, and as Mr. Rucker said, it's not goodbye, it's we'll see you later. That's all.
All right. Thank you. Alderman Morose.
I hope I could talk tonight. The food trucks, is it is it true of what I read that we're not going to have a food truck festival at Osage Beach City Park?
Yes, that is correct. The Food Truck Coalition chose to move to the Ozark Amphitheater.
That's a shame. Also, Zach, did that Vapex equipment come in yet?
No, ma'am. There's a 4 to 6 month lead time on the unit itself. So hopefully when it shows, we'll be ready to turn it on and go live. But yeah, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks. Sorry.
I was going to say.
4 to 6 weeks.
Pretty sure on that one.
Okay.
As I thought about myself, so yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, 5 weeks maybe, hopefully.
All right. Thank you. And what is the progress, or where are we at about beginning construction for the Veterans statue thing? Veterans Memorial. Thank you.
I think the person that should answer that question is Drew.
Drew,
yeah.
what is the answer?
So we recently opened the bid, and I think the board, I'm excited to say, I think the bid came in at an appropriate budget. We should be able to move forward with it after your all's approval.
It'll be on your next board meeting.
Yeah.
We'll bring it to the board and.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Other than that, kudos. I agree with Bob. I think it's wonderful to have warm, fun culture among the staff. And I think you all are an example of doing that, and we certainly appreciate it. And Mike, I've already said a few words, but I will repeat it. Thank you so much for all that you've done for us, and best of luck to you. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I only have two things. One's pretty lengthy. I need to defend the city once again. Eric Gregory knows what I'm talking about. For whatever reason, there's media outlets out there that just like to stir the pot here at the city of Osage Beach. Yeah. And I don't know if it's personal gratification or it's to get viewers or what, but most recently, and I'm not going to name names, I'm sure you know them, but there was a big, it wasn't a news agency, it was a media outlet that talked about, oh my God, what's going on in Osage Beach. Oh. We had a city administrator that left. She was here for 10 years and she up and left. Well, city administrators, their average lifespan is about 7 years. She was here 10. She had a wonderful opportunity to start her own business as a CPA, and she moved on, and we wished her well, brought in Devin, just businesses, municipalities, things change, you move forward. Then it came in, then they hired Jeff Hooker, and Jeff Hooker, all of a sudden, for who knows why, he just up and left. Oh my gosh, what's going on at the city of Osage Beach? And the weird thing is I go on KRMS Radio every Monday, Mayor Monday. I address these things. It's been in the news agencies. Expo had a story. KRMS Radio had a story. And they told exactly why Gina was leaving. They told exactly what happened with Jeff Hooker. They told exactly bringing Devin in. All this stuff has been in the news agencies, but yet a local media outlet is asking the question, what's going on? Well, it's said here in boardroom, it's said on the radio, it's said over and over and over, but yet a media outlet, not a news agency, but a media outlet that likes to act like a news agency, doesn't know what's going on and what's going on. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And what's going on in the city of Osage Beach. And ever since Mayor Harmerson came in, he's had some good things, but some bad things. But do we really know what's going on? And then, of course, the Facebook users, then they go down that rabbit hole and over and over and over. Not a big deal to me, but it gets frustrating that I feel the need to defend the city because most businesses go through this. Bosses leave, managers leave, they get hired elsewhere. Mike Welty, he said he was the longest employee of the city of Osage Beach. What was the word, Mike?
Longest tenured, and certainly not true, obviously not true when you look at our police chief here.
Yes, and basically I made the claim that longest tenured, and basically made it sound like he's upset, so he's going to go do the same job someplace else. Well, he's not, people. He's going to make a fine city administrator. That's the next logical step for an assistant city administrator. So we love him. We wish him well. And things happen where he got a great opportunity. But yet they're making it sound like we're falling apart and how terrible we are and what's going on in the city of Osage Beach. And I have other notes here, but time of night, I'm not going to go through all of these. But, you know, the main thing to just remember, people, is don't believe everything you hear from media outlets or social media. We are as transparent as we can possibly be. This is not breaking news. Again, we're on Karamis Radio. We're on the dais talking about it. Everybody knew why the different changes in positions happened here. The city's strong. We're moving into a new direction. Gina's not replaceable, but Devlin's not replaceable. She's going to bring to the table things that Gina couldn't do. The new the assistant city administrator, same thing. Will not be a Mike Welty, but will be some things Mike Welty isn't, and he can take all of this knowledge and move forward. So the city is strong. Don't believe what you hear on social media, people that are trying to stir the pot here. There's a lot of good things going here. And if we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing, or if there's a better way to do it, we want to hear from you. The claim was made that, well, the mayor ignored my calls. Well, the questions he was asking me was the same questions that had been answered over and over and over. So why do I need to answer a question again to a media outlet? Okay? So we're fully transparent here. Listen to the meetings. Take the time at night to log on to Karamis Radio or Facebook. We're transparent here. And if there's something that we need to address, tell us. All right. That's my soapbox, is all Rucker. The last thing is Mike Welty. I have gotten to know Mike in the last 2.5 years, and I still remember after I was elected, but before I was installed, we went down to the city park. We didn't have somebody to take care of the Easter egg hunt. And he's like, hey, why don't you and your wife come on out? And he was down there all day long. Everywhere I went, there was Mike Welty. And I told Kim, I said, I think he is the most dedicated employee at that city. And he doesn't even live here. And he drives down here, and he's always available by text. And, we've had some personal conversations, maybe 1 or 2 beers together. And I wish you nothing but the best. You know how much I respect you and consider you a close friend. And I'm looking forward to you teaching me how to golf here in a couple of weeks. So with that, congratulations, Mike Welty. All right. That's all I have, folks. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Alderman Morose. Do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Hoffman. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Susan tell you?
You had a birthday?